I know you might be clicking on this video, maybe after the event, maybe not live, maybe you're watching this on replay and you see the time that it's running and you're thinking, what's this about? This is a live stream. This isn't typical YouTube content. It's not even typical for YouTube whiskey content. This is meant to be picked up live, either in the lounge hanging out with fellow barflies, or you can watch it podcast style on the replay. And I'm very grateful to those of you that do that. If you are picking this up on the replay, have a wee look in the description box underneath. You'll find timestamps, chapter markers there that you can navigate your way through things a wee bit quicker, hopefully. I'll welcome you, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it on the replay, in just a wee minute. See you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Thursday. Welcome to another vPub. It's wonderful to be able to welcome so many of you in again, and thank you for waiting patiently on us getting started there. Yes, if you are watching this on the replay, I really do appreciate it. And you should also appreciate all the barflies that are either here live or perhaps picking it up alongside you on the replay that help fund this by following and joining the channel. Through their support, through all the barflies support, it means that you're watching this without an advert before, during, or after. The replays are not monetized. The vPubs are free and have no advertisements whatsoever. I'm very grateful to all the barflies and all the patrons for their support and allowing me to make that decision very, very easy. Anyway, welcome everybody. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you've got something nice in your hands. Share in the lounge with your fellow barflies. Tell us what's in the glass where you're coming in from. Say hello to everybody and you'll find that they're a very welcoming crowd indeed. Let's have a wee look tonight to see who we have with us. Going to jump in quite early and welcome as many of you as I possibly can. But I'm going to start off by saying a huge apology to my friend, and I know that he's in tonight. I saw his name pop up as I was getting set up there. My friend from New Zealand. It's very early in the morning for him, Phil, down there at First Phil Whisky, doing fantastic content on his own channel down there. But he bought me a dram last week and I missed it. I was too busy gassing, or hopefully distracted by a fantastic guest that we had last week in the shape of Nc'Nean. The feedback from last week's stream has been amazing. Thank you all so much. You all fell in love with Graham, as I did too. Thought he was a wonderfully insightful, knowledgeable, candid, and welcoming guy. It was a fantastic session last week. And I think, Phil, that's maybe why I missed your dram. I was so distracted by Graham Nc'Nean last week. But Phil, thank you very, very much, and apologies for missing it. Cheers, my friend. I've also had a dram bought to me by my friend over on the East Coast, Lee Hosey Haddington Whisky, saying, flying visit, we'll catch the replay. Cheers, Roy. I know you're a busy man, Lee. It's great for you to drop in from time to time when you can, my friend, and I hope you enjoy it on the replay. Good to see you, Lee, and I hope you're doing well. If you get much snow over on the East Coast, we've got loads of snow, but it took my back out earlier this week. I'm sitting comfortably just now, not in any discomfort, but I'm not moving quite as freely as I was before. I thought I was a teenager again, barreling down the slopes and throwing snowballs about with the kids. It was great fun, though. Let's see who we have in the shape of all the beautiful barflies and dedicated barflies and beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. That normally just rolls off the tongue. Anyway, I'll welcome some of you guys. QWERTY Aardvark is in. Good to see you. He's saying evening. Ryan Sutherland, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, Ryan. I've still got your sample here. Not made it to the post office this week. For anybody that's waiting on stuff from me, I apologise. I usually get out there on a Wednesday or Thursday once a week just now because of the COVID restrictions and because of just kids at home. It's really difficult to get out of the house to do anything. But now with the snow and everything, it's been extra difficult. I'm heading there tomorrow, Ryan. Your sample is waiting there for you, and I'll get it out to you. My friend Richard Hall is here. Good to see you, Richard. I've actually got a dram. I got a wonderful wee gift from you through the post. Look at that gorgeous handwriting. on a bottle of a wee sample of a Cadenhead's Lagavulin. I'm looking forward to trying that, my friend. Thank you so much. Dan Fordham is here. Good to see you, Dan. Hammy Diver is here. St. Evenroy, Roy, good to see you, my friend. Donnerpass Whiskey. Tim, I know that you're probably going off to do a shift tonight. He's saying hi, Roy, and everyone. Heading out to work, but we'll watch on the replay in 12 hours. I hope that shift is okay for you. I hope the weather treats you quite nicely, Tim, and it's wonderful to see you in. Marcus Kreitner from Austria is here on the mend. His recovery, he's doing really well. Marcus Kreitner, good to see you. Good evening, Roy. Nice to see you. Best evening of the week. Thank you so much. You're always a gentleman, Marcus. I hope Christina is doing well too. Bruno Martins is in, saying thanks for having us once again in your whiskey cave. It feels a wee bit like a whiskey cave sometimes, Bruno. It really does. Bruno over in Portugal, nice to have you. Yash is here, saying evening, Roy. Timestamps are cool and a welcome touch. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm going to try and reply to every comment that you put, that take the time to put a comment on the replay underneath. I'm going to try and reply to all of them if I can. I've done okay so far this year, and I've certainly done okay with the vPubs and remembering to do a bit of housekeeping before I lock up and go off to bed. I scrub through and put in some chapters to help you navigate on the replay. Thanks, Yash. Whiskey Games, Matt Bishop is here saying, can't stay around tonight. We'll catch up later. Maybe you've got a driveway to clear. Or maybe you've got some whiskey dominoes or other whiskey games to craft out of old staves, Matt. Good to have you in, my friend. David Anderson is here saying, good evening, Roy. Sipping a wee Brora, having 12 tonight. Excellent stuff. Good to have you, David. Ewan Walker is saying, evening. Hope you're well. First time catching this live this year. Feels weird watching instead of just listening. Hope you can keep up with the chat. Okay, Ewan, it's wonderful to have you, my friend. Remind me where you are. With a name like Ewan Walker, there's a good chance that you're in Scotland, certainly with that spelling of Ewan as well, my friend. Callum Muir is here. Good to see you, Callum. Glenn Duncan, Radek, Precarious, Dave, Daniel Gray, Dave Cummins. Dave, I just saw an email from you that arrived just before I went live tonight. I didn't get a chance to read it and digest it, but I think I know the spirit of where you're going, and I think there's an inevitability of what you're talking about in that here. For anybody that's heard me talking about Dave in the past, him and I had a great plan for him to have his first ever single malt whiskey together when he was in Scotland. Obviously, the pandemic and everything paid to that, but it might be that we're able to do something virtually. He's really enjoying the community. He's really enjoying everything that we're talking about and building up a knowledge, but you can imagine he's desperate to connect with the spirit. He's a similar age to me, and I think we need to do something to address that. Nice to have you, Dave. Good to have you. And Whiskey Novice, Jim is here from Northern Ireland as well. Jim, always a pleasure to see your face in here, my friend. I always feel a wee bit better with you around, and I hope you're keeping well over there in Northern Ireland. Although I hear that you didn't have any snow in Northern Ireland. I was speaking to your buddy Paul recently. Annie Tiger is here. Gino Camus from Canada. Good to have you in, Gino. Don't know if I'm spelling your surname well, Gino, but it's always nice to welcome you in, buddy. I saw his skidoo this week, a picture of his skidoo in Canada. They've got a lot more snow than we have, and they can change their transport, I guess, for the winter. Let's see who else we've got. And Helen is here. Good to see you. Wheels, Gabriel B, Miguel Gomez Fernandez here in Madrid. Welcome, Miguel. That looks like a new name as well. Bienvenido, my friend. And he's sipping a Lagavulin 16. Very interesting. Lagavulin 16 is out of stock in a few of the major online UK retailers. I don't know what it's about. Maybe it's just a hiccup. Maybe it's just typical supply chain strain right now, and not just in whiskey, but in general. There's lead times have gone out for most things, I think. I can't imagine it's anything to do with Brexit, but that's having it's playing its hand in a lot of things too. Jimmy Legg is here. Jimmy, always good to see you. Hello, you little devil. I can't remember the last time I've been called a little devil, Jimmy, but it's good to welcome you all. Wonderful to see you all. Just a wee nod in the direction, because I know it's going to be in a lot of your minds. We're all waiting to hear word from one of us, one of our community. Our friend was somebody that's inspired the community over the course of the last few years, and that's Brett, Scotch Trooper. The last we heard, he was really in a lot of discomfort, and he was transferred into a hospice with his family. It's a very, very difficult time, and there is a fundraiser out for Brett, who in summertime of 2020 developed stage 4 pancreatic cancer and has since suffered, and he's now in a hospice. It's really, really difficult to talk about, to think about, even to look at the pictures, some of the pictures that you'll see in his Instagram feed and things, just how strong he's been and the words that he continues to post, really bold, brave, inspirational words for anybody. But one thing you pick up from reading through that is just how much he was impassioned about whiskey, how much he loved whiskey, how much he loved Star Wars, of course. And how inspirational he was in the way that he shared those things with us. His bravery comes across, but also the idea of fragility. And we would all do well to spend a wee bit of time reading Scotch Trooper's posts and remembering that from time to time, I think. I'm going to raise a wee glass to say I'm thinking of him, and I'm thinking very much of his young family. And I hope that he's comfortable. Brett, thank you for everything. Cheers. I'm sure we will all find a way of sending tributes to Brett for everything that he shared with us over the years. There is a fundraiser out there, a GoFundMe fundraiser. And if you're interested in finding out details of that or what it's about, Mark Gillespie from Whisky Cast shared on his Instagram how to connect with that fundraiser campaign, and also another campaign with an email address that was simply, I don't remember what it is now, just check Mark Gillespie's Instagram feed, please, where if you've got a story or in some way that Scotch Trooper and his whiskey and his sharing has connected with you in a positive way, they're collecting stories so that they can pass on to his family, his young family, and just let them know how many people that he touched in a very, very unique way through his sharing of whiskey, his photography, and his sharing of Star Wars as well. I'm sure we'll all keep each other up to date with the news and the events that's happening over there, but he's very much in everyone's thoughts tonight, I'm sure, and it seemed appropriate to at least mention it. Watchman 999 is in. Good to see you. Jimmy Jazz is in. Russell Whiskey is in. And Jerry Miller as well. And my friend up north, Alistair Gray, who somehow managed to get his hands on a Kilkerran 8. Now, this isn't supposed to be released in the UK until tomorrow, as far as I understand that Kilkerran 8. The Springbank releases, I think, are hitting shelves more or less tomorrow. That's the understanding, at least. And it's a kind of a nice segue into the topic tonight. You might remember a vPub that I put out back in late 2019, I think, going from memory. You know, it was when we were just getting our heads around Daftmill and what Daftmill was. It hadn't been out in the landscape for that long. But already it had set the heather alight. Not in terms of, wow, this is an amazing whiskey. It is a very good whiskey, generally speaking. It's very, very good whiskey. Arguably quite unique as well. But it was more the idea that because there was so little of it, and because there was so much pent-up demand for it for so long, it was disappearing so fast, so fast. And it was disappearing not just because people wanted to get their hands on a Daftmill to try it, but because it's a new distillery. So it probably gave that idea that people could start to collect a new distillery and every release, every expression, that kind of idea. So for the completists out there and the collectors, it was maybe an appealing thing. There are not many distilleries that you can do that with. And time, and it's frustrating, the drinker can't really connect easily with Daftmill. And there's also that idea that whether you're buying it as a drinker, whether you're buying it as an investor, a speculator, whatever you're going to do with it, whether you're buying it just to collect, whatever it is, as soon as this new release comes out, and there seems to be a lot of releases coming out, believe me, it's so difficult to even keep up with the releases that are coming out. And I'm not even just speaking about new expressions from existing distilleries. I'm speaking about new distilleries, completely new core ranges. It's dizzying how many whiskies are coming out. And yet the fervour builds. Driven often, sometimes by, if we're all honest, and I'm going to keep the vPub all about the vPub. I'm going to keep this as inclusive as I possibly can. It's all about inclusivity here. Whether you're a beginner, whether a lot of the things that we're going to talk about tonight don't really connect with you or make sense to you yet, or whether you're a seasoned whiskey drinker that's been through the phase of bottle chasing and have managed to temper it and come out the other end with some wisdom and some tips and tricks and ideas. We're going to keep it inclusive for everyone, and we're going to keep it positive as well, because there's no point in pointing the finger at anybody for the lack of availability and strains on supply when we all are part of the problem. There are even idiots, as I said on Twitter this week, maniacs on YouTube evangelizing about whiskies and then wondering why nobody can get their hands on them. If I consider my own bubble, the people that I have convinced to try whiskey and taught and helped in order to try and enjoy whiskey, just around my dining room table, just the people that I hang out with, the same people that have gone on to have their own whiskey collections, to become passionate and knowledgeable about whiskey. If I imagine that, and then if I imagine everybody doing the same thing, then the community is growing and growing and growing. We're all sharing our whiskey, we're all evangelizing, we're all getting our friends into it. So it makes sense that all of these things will play a little part in the supply of the whiskey, especially the premium whiskey, the good whiskey, the single malt whiskies, the sometimes the limited editions, sometimes the exclusive new blends, sometimes the things that are in short supply. They're going to be pressured the most. But we all play a part in this picture. And I was struck recently by going back and reading through the Dramble. It's a blog. It's a well-established, long-standing blog written and penned by Matt McKay. Apologies. And he's not just doing really good, insightful tasting notes and reviews, critical judgment of whiskey with a score. He's also given it context, and he's weaving in layers and stories and backdrops and observations, and they're really quite reflective and insightful sometimes. And occasionally you'll read an article written by Matt, and it strikes a chord. You recognize it. Perhaps you even recognize it in yourself, something that's happened to you, an opinion that you have, maybe something that you maybe consider that you suffer from yourself, bottle chasing and things like this. Very interesting blog to read, one of my favorites to read. And Menno recently, we're going to have a Menno quiz tonight. Menno is here to host a Menno quiz. Fantastic. I get to participate along with you. Looking forward to welcoming in Menno a bit later. But he sent me a link to one of the most recent posts by Matt, where he started to talk about independent bottlers and their role in the industry, what they do. Very interesting. I reached out to Matt and I said, you and I could probably collaborate together. And then through a video chat, we got into this really deep conversation, and it led me to reread one of his articles about his Ardbeg Wee Beastie. And you'll see that there's a statement in there that struck immediately the topic that we should talk about. There's always more whiskey. That idea of taking a 4-letter acronym, FOMO, and it turning into an even worse 4-letter acronym. Instead of fear of missing out, fury of missing out. It was clear that was going to be a nice crunchy thing to talk about. And I appreciate that not everybody is going to suffer from these dynamics. Not everybody's going to suffer from these things. Maybe you have some wonderful ways to deal with FOMO and the frustration of missing out on those bottles, whatever it may be. If you have got some wisdom, share it, calmly share it with our fellow barflies that are in here tonight. Because despite being into whiskey for 15 years now, despite bottle chasing from time to time, there are still expressions that come along from time to time that I struggle with too, honestly. And it's because I really do want to try that whiskey. I'm generally speaking going out to buy and open and try and share. That's what I'm all about. That's why I exist online. It's not because to show you a wonderful, shiny collection. I'm not a completist and I'm not a collector. I just accumulate whiskey at a rate probably faster than I can drink it, clearly. But it's purely for the flavour chase and it's for sharing. But I still suffer from buying more than I need and sometimes buying things that I most certainly don't need, even don't need for the channel. So it's Matt that I'm going to welcome in just a few minutes. Dribs and Drams is in saying, I just cracked a wee beastie for review today. Can't get it in my province, so it took a while to get one. Do you know what? The wee beastie took a hell of a long time to come to UK shelves as well. It was available in the States and other markets a long time before it got to us. It might have been a lot to do with issues last year, but when I eventually did get here, it didn't last long on the shelves most of the time either. Reasonable price, honestly speaking, for an Ardbeg. Yes, it's young whiskey at 5 years old, but I think it was sub £40. Everyone is in. Good to see you, buddy. Human psychology is our own enemy, and those of evil intent can easily exploit our desire for rarity of being left out. Many studies on this takes active efforts to fight these biases. I would have to say you're right, and awareness is always the first step, isn't it? It's like anything. Somebody, Pete, has bought me a dram. Cheers, malt, mate. Plenty of good whiskey out there. Whiskey is for drinking, not speculating. I have to say that it's very much the spirit of this channel, my feeling, to agree with you exactly. But I'll also pose something that if I am accumulating more than I can drink, and then suddenly one of the bottles has increased in value to the point that it would be irresponsible to me, to my collection, to my future collection, to my family, to my own responsibilities, for me to open it and drink it, because the whiskey that's in that bottle simply cannot live up to its current value. There's an argument there then, well, if I do then take that whiskey, does that make me not a drinker? Does it make me a speculator? Does it make me an investor? So there's no clear-cut thing here. There's lots of kind of blurring of lines and hybrids. Cyclos Kerbango, that's definitely a new name, and I hope I've pronounced that well. He's saying the chase is better than the catch. Thanks, mate. Some people often find that very thing. The sport of tracking down and finding the bottles is more important than the whiskey. And I think that people with that mentality often, they're not going to enjoy hanging out here in the vPub with us, because we're all about the wow, what this liquid can do to you, how it can affect you, as you hang out with friends. I constantly talk about the fact that there's no nutrition or sustenance in whiskey. The only reason we consume it is for it to connect with our primary senses, something to look at, yes, but something to smell, something to taste, something to feel. Its only job is to remind us of what it is to be alive. That is why so many people are impassioned about whiskey. That's why so many people are here, I think. Jerry Miller has bought me a dram as well. Expensive, hard to find whiskies are nice, but there are always plenty of $50 to $100 US bottles to make me happy forever. That, I think, is a perfect sentiment. I'm going to frame our general discussion tonight by sharing you a short video. If you've got any hankies handy, if you're a wee bit like me and you suffer a wee bit from sentimentality and emotion from time to time, you might want to brace yourselves for this one, because occasionally this one will grab you right in the feels. This is from a channel that exists on YouTube. It's been dormant for a while now, but there's still fantastic content out there. The channel's called The World Sip, and this is a video of Freddie Johnson over in Buffalo Trace. But really, every word he's saying, just replace bourbon with any kind of whiskey you like, honestly. Enjoy this little video.
During this special tasting with this group, this guy had flown these folks up here on his corporate jet, and we're trying to do our tasting, and every time I go to mention something, he said, yeah, I got 5 bottles of that. I've got 6 of those. Oh, I got a whole bunch of these. And every time he'd do it, his wife would grimace, and his buddies and these folks he'd flown up here were standing back against the wall, and they were like looking like, well, here we got this shit again. I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I said, but you seem to have an exceptionally large collection of older age bourbons. He said, I do. And I said, well, I want you to answer me a question. I said, how many of these older age bourbons that you got have you shared with your friends that you flew up here on the jet? That guy gave me a look that said, you no longer exist. You've crossed the line.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm thinking, I'm doomed. Okay? The guy never looked. His wife winked at me and smiled. And I said, sir, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I said, but I want you to look across at the building. And he looked across. I said, you'll notice all those old barrels in the warehouse. He never said anything, but he looked. And I said, sir, when my grandfather came here at the beginning of the 1900s. I said, do you know that warehouse was full of barrels of whiskey? And when they passed away, that warehouse was still full of barrels of whiskey. And he just looked at me. I said, then along comes my dad and Elmer. And when they arrived at this distillery, the warehouse was full of barrels of whiskey. I said, when they both passed away, the funeral directors did a drive-by of this distillery with their caskets. I said, and as they drove by carrying them to the graveyard, I said, that warehouse was still full of barrels of whiskey. I said, I came here at 5 years old. I said, I've been around this distillery off and on all my life. I said, sir, I said, I'm over 70 years old. When I pass away, guess what? That warehouse is still going to be full of barrels of whiskey. I said, my point simply is this, sir. I said, you begin to realize there's always going to be old barrels and bottles of whiskey. I said, but look around at your family and your friends and the workers that you brought up here today. I said, we're the fragile part of this whole thing. I said, if you're fortunate enough to have a good bottle of bourbon, that's what they're for. They're meant to be shared and enjoyed. I said, just personally speaking for me, I would rather have the memories that a really good bottle of bourbon provided for me and my friends together than to pass away knowing that that bottle is still sitting there and none of us have enjoyed that moment. The guy never acknowledged that. He never said anything. We finished up. He left. 2 months later, I get the coolest letter from this guy. He said, Freddie, I'm writing to thank you. He said, I want to tell you what happened. My son came home from college with 2 of his buddies that were bourbon enthusiasts. So I took them downstairs and I showed them my collection. Then what I did was I went down into my cabinet and I got out one of my old bottles of bourbon. I opened it up and my son, his 2 buddies and I did a toast and drank from that bottle together. He said, the reason I'm writing you to tell you this is because it's the first time my son has ever hugged me in public since he was a kid. And he said, thank you, Dad, for what you did. He said, I'll never make that mistake again. When we do this kind of stuff, I try to get people to understand, yeah, we're talking about bourbon, but bourbon has a history. It's a legacy. It's a relationship. It's an emotional connection. And when you're sitting around with friends, and you've probably done that already, and you pull out a real good bottle of bourbon and you get to sipping on it, it's like you start telling a story about something that happened and you're sitting there sipping on the bourbon and you're kicking back and it triggers something that you remember. And then you finish your story and everybody has a good laugh and then you start in with another one. Next thing you know, the bottle's gone. But the memories of that moment continue on. And on and on. Isn't life a journey? Come on. Places to go, things to do.
The legendary Freddie Johnson, Isn't Life a Journey? Like I say, that's from a YouTube channel called The World Sip. It's still in existence. There are other videos over there for you to go and explore. It'd be interesting to see where those guys went with that project. Some great videos. I'm sure that connected and resonated with a lot of people out there. I've shared it in the past. I know that's the first time I've shared it on the vPub. But wow, it's kind of that thing, is that when you realize what whiskey is created for, what it's actually here to do, the effect that it can have on people, on moments, on relationships, on friendships. That's kind of how I want to frame tonight. I don't want to criticize anybody for speculating, investing, collecting, completing collections. And I certainly don't want to force people to open bottles and things. But awareness is the first step. So I'm going to reach out to, actually, there's a dram being bought to me by Mike Baker. He's saying, that's worth more than this $10. I can't wait to be able to share more whiskey with friends. Thanks for the reminder. I think, Mike, we're all very, very keen for those days to return the way they used to be as well, my friend. But thank you for your dram. Cheers to you, my friend. So with that in mind, Russell Whiskey's saying whiskey is about people. People are always first, Russell, absolutely. Going to reach out to the person I'm looking forward to chatting to tonight, and I hope that you're going to enjoy hearing from my friend Matt McKay as well. I'll make sure he's in good shape and bring him into our stream and welcome Matt McKay, behind the bar at the vPub. Matt,
Hey,
so grateful that you could join us. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome behind the bar. I hope you're comfortable. Are you doing well?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. I think
Good.
we need to be comfortable because we're going to be chewing on a couple of crunchy topics tonight, potentially. But what did you think of that video there, Matt? How did that frame tonight, the discussion that we're going to go into? Have you seen that video before? I think I shared it with you.
I have, yeah, I've seen the video before, not for a little while, so it's always good to see it again. I mean, you know, the music just pulls on the heartstrings a little bit, and it's a funny one because whilst he's saying that, all those bottles behind him, all of the pappies, they're all still closed. You know, let's clear that. But equally, as something that frames the discussion, yeah, I mean, it's spot on for what we sort of started to delve into, the idea that, you know, life is so fleeting and there is always more whiskey. You know, there might not be always that whiskey, and I think we'll come on to that shortly, but there'll always be more. And increasingly, you know, production's expanding, new distilleries are coming on. You know, if you want a bottle, you can get a bottle of whiskey. You can get a bottle of good whiskey, and you don't have to spend a fortune. But people don't just want a good bottle of whiskey; they want that whiskey, and that can be tricky. And you know, certainly, I've been there, and there's been bottles that have slipped through my fingers, and yeah, got annoyed with it. You know, it's
like
it's,
I say, Matt,
we
have to say at the head of the thing. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself and give us a brief history of you. We're part of the problem, and we fully accept that. As recently as late last year, I was in a queue at the Good Spirits Company, my second visit, because I'd forgotten to pick up my Ardnamurchan that day. And I said, I'd like a bottle of the Ardnamurchan, please. And the guy in front of me was literally walking out the shop with the last bottle, and he looked at me and he just said, sorry, my days. He walked out the door. But these things happen. Now, I was very, very fortunate, and I walked back out to meet Sevi out in the street. Sevi, the whiskey alchemist, he's often in, and he had a bottle there. If it's for you, it doesn't go past you. But we have to accept, Matt, at the outset, you writing, blogging, part of your new role is communications for Bimber. We are all kind of part of this huge machine that gets excited and impassioned about whiskey, and we all play a little part of it. Tell us a wee bit, just before we go into the nuts and bolts of this discussion and this machine, about Matt McKay. How did you get into whiskey, and where do you find yourself today, Matt?
Sure. So I got into whiskey about 22 years ago now. Effectively, I wrote about this for SMWS a few weeks ago. Effectively, at the time, I was doing a lot of traveling because that was a thing back then. And I was drinking a lot of gin and tonic. I'm not the world's best flyer. I'm not a panicked flyer, but I like a drink to calm my nerves. So I was just, you know, free drink gin and tonic. And I was getting bored of Gordon's and tonic because it's not the world's best drink. And the chap next to me, you know, they said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I'll have a Scotch and ginger." I was like, "Okay, well, I've you know, I was a young lad at that point. I've never tried that. Go on then. I'll have a Scotch and ginger." And it was Dewar's White Label. You know, blending whiskey, and I quite enjoyed it. And having then got through a few of those, I thought, well, why don't I just try this Dewar's White Label on its own? I didn't really like it at all. You know, just Dewar's White Label, and I'm not sure I would really drink Dewar's as it comes now, but I still like Dewar's and ginger. Why not? But it sparked something in me. It's like, well, how can I like something with ginger? So I can still taste the whiskey. How can I like it with the ginger, but then not like it at all on its own? And that just started, over 20 years of getting deeper and deeper into exploring whiskey, starting a whiskey club, starting writing a whiskey blog, a whiskey website, which has been going a number of years. And that in turn has led to what I'm doing part-time now. For my main job, I'm a communications director in biomedical science. That's been pretty busy for the last 12 months, shall we say. Biomedical science is quite a thing right now. And when I'm not doing that, I keep myself even busier by heading up marketing and communications for Bimber, which is definitely a distillery, which, you know, like Daft Mill, there isn't enough whiskey. You know, that's at the other side of the scale. Whilst there's always enough whiskey, certainly when it comes to working at Bimber, there isn't enough whiskey. And we're looking at how we can try and manage that from the other side of the equation. So that's me. I've even specially turned my camera around today, just for you. I'm normally facing the other way, So those who have seen me online have probably got bored of the other view, but I thought, well, this way you can see at least a few bottles of whiskey in the cabinet. Why not?
It's interesting that you point out something there, and let's kind of just kick the ball rolling with that. Let's get because Bimber appeared on the scene, slightly different from Daft Mill. I think the only thing that's in common between the two, they're both new whiskies. Of course, one's Scotch, one's a London distillery. We understand that there's a difference, but Daft Mill had been building this pent-up demand for a long time. And we know that the capacity of 60,000 litres, something small like that, 65,000 litres at Daft Mill, is very small. We always knew it was going to be very small, but they were building it up for years and years. And it was 12 years before their first release. So we knew that there was likely to be some form of impact. Then you look at Bimber. Bimber, that's not the same case. 2016, 2017, I think, for the boys at Bimber, right?
16 for laying down casks, yeah.
So what we're talking about there is a very different thing. That's quite a young whiskey, quite a bold, new whiskey, and actually a very good quality whiskey, a very unique whiskey, much like Daft Mill, honestly, good quality, unique. But with that, that's kind of not what we're getting at tonight, is it? Because we do have to tackle that. We have to tackle the fact that these are small-scale operations, and if there is demand for them, there is no way that they can keep up. So what we're talking about is that there has to be a way to accept that there just isn't enough of that whiskey to go around. Is that right?
There's an acceptance.
We have to do?
Partly. I mean, just walking away from it is not the answer, and I'll probably dig into that later. You know, how do you get away from FOMO? Just walk away. Well, no, that's not the answer. You know, you've got your passions and your interests. There has to be an acknowledgement that there's not enough to go round. And, you know, working for a distillery, I certainly don't like it when the blame comes back towards the distillery. You know, why don't you make enough? Well, we just can't, you know. We could make more, but then it wouldn't taste like it does now, and then you wouldn't like it. Equally, I think it's important to be clear. The reason why quite a lot of people like Bimber, Daft Mill, Chichibu, any of those sort of distilleries that are making, you know, they're not making millions of litres. They are chasey. And quite a lot of people like them because they're difficult to get. Because when they do get a bottle, it makes them, you know, there's some sort of endorphin release. They feel like they've had an achievement. And that's sort of a positive thing, you know, it encourages more whiskey. It's sort of a negative thing, though, because then when people don't get the bottle, they feel like they're missing out. And to my mind, a lot of this is spurred on by social media, you know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and people just, you know, like the guy in the video, Roy, you know, I've got 5 of this, I've got 5 of that. People naturally like to show off. And that either, to my mind, spurs other people to feel, well, oh, whiskey, that's exciting. That's how I should behave. I need to get 5 bottles of you know, happy 20-year-old or whatever. Or it upsets other people, but they genuinely want to try it. And sometimes they feel that they might be superior. You know, like, well, I want to open it, and this person doesn't want to open it. Therefore, I have more right. And all of these issues mesh together, and there is no simple answer. And to my mind, just, you know, the easy throwaway line of just walk away. You know, you can't get all the whiskey, you can't chase it, just walk away. I don't think that solves it, because then you're sort of admitting defeat and you're saying that, you know, you can't have that whiskey and you should give up on your passions. So I think it's a tough one. I think there are ways to manage your expectations, and there are ways that you can, you know, temper your own beast. I mean, certainly, and I'm sure we'll come on to it, you know, there's been times when I've bought whiskey, I've not bought it to flip it. I don't flip whiskey. I've not bought it to collect it. I don't really collect whiskey. But, you know, 10 years later, I still haven't opened it. So why the hell did I buy it? I wanted it. Did I chase it? I don't know. Maybe I've forgotten even how I bought it. I've just got it.
It's that idea of over accumulation, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm very guilty of that myself. I buy bottles because the opportunity is there, and I know it's not always going to be there. So it's something that I'm maybe going to regret buying in the future. So it's kind of diluted bottle chasing then. It's kind of, I've not specifically gone after it, but I've not let it pass me by. I've taken the opportunity. probably in the full knowledge that it's unlikely I'm going to open it anytime soon, but I'm somehow comforted that it's there within reach should I need it. I don't maybe need to reach out to the auction or whatever it is in the future. Listen, that's all part of that. So it's very much a case of when we talk about being part of the problem, but by very nature of that means that we understand, I think, most of these dynamics, most of these things that drive us to do these things. We are fortunate. Let's be honest. We are not squandering money right now. We're very lucky with the booming whiskey scene that there's almost this really comforting, soft place to land. If we do look at our collection and decide that we've overspent, it's very unlikely that we're going to be caught short, that we will be able to get our money back on some of the bottles in order to kind of continue maybe picking up more contemporary or more recent or more interesting releases that we can share. So that's part of it too. I would ask a question. If you are maybe looking at something like the strain that's on the supply from a Daft Mill, a Bimber, but these are really small scale distilleries, much more established distilleries that have been there a lot longer. For example, the likes of the Campbelltown distillery, Springbank, when the releases come out from there, and so many others from the new distilleries that are appearing. It's almost, you would have to be some kind of obsessed demon or part of a club, part of a group of people that have their finger on the pulse of when these bottles are going to drop, when they're going to be released, what's going to be online, what's going to be in certain stores and things like that. There's an obsession about that side of it as well. Have you found yourself in that environment, or have you always managed to skirt around it?
Ooh, good question. Personal question, Roy.
If you talk about, I'm not asking about specific, but if you talk about social media playing a part in clubs, Facebook groups, and whatever it may be.
No, I'll answer it honestly. There was a time when, absolutely. I had signed up to every newsletter going. I was following every single account, spending, in my opinion, just too much time searching and looking for whiskey, then either enjoying whiskey, which I think is the most important thing, or even learning about whiskey. What was I learning about? I was learning how to navigate websites. I was learning that, some websites, when the new release comes out, you look at the URL, you can work out where it's going to be before it comes out, tricks of the trade. And it just got to the point where, in order to, and I wouldn't say I'm some type of crazy FOMO guy who ever spent 12 hours a day looking at it. But there are people who, it's the chase. They really do want those bottles. But in order for me to bring myself away from that, I unsubscribed from loads of newsletters for things that am I really interested in this? I know it's difficult to get signed up to it. Do I really want this? I don't know. There's always more whiskey. So, I've unsubscribed, not from everything. And I still keep, I keep my finger on some of the pulses. But
was that a self-awareness thing?
Yeah.
Did you have any intervention from anybody else, or was that Matt McKay's inner strength that managed to be aware of that?
No, I think that was a Matt McKay self-awareness thing. I mean, there are examples of it. I remember when I keep most of my bottles, if they're not sort of stashed away in cupboards due to storage issues, they're in the sort of bar I'm lucky to have next door. And I remember when my dad came in and he just sort of looked at it. And my parents have always been interested in my passions, because they're your parents, and that's a great thing. What are you up to? What have you been doing there? But when you start talking about whiskey, they're only pretending to be interested, really. They're interested in what you're doing and your enjoyment, but they're not interested in the topic. So my dad comes into the bar, and I'd only recently just moved into the house, and he just looked at it, and I was quite impressed with him, because he just said, "Is it like Pokemon?" And I said, "What do you think, Dad?" And he's like, "You're trying to catch them all." And even at that point, I wouldn't even describe myself as one of the biggest chasers ever, but his perception was, just looking at these number of bottles, he was like, "This is crazy." But no, in terms of, I think really it just got to the point where I was spending more time writing, researching, studying, doing whiskey qualifications, working for Bimber. Something's got to give. And if you really want to get all these bottles, there's another thousands of people trying to do it. You've got to put the time in. And it just really came down to, it's like, well, why would I want to put the time in? I'm really interested in learning about it and enjoying it. Something's got to give, and it's going to be that. So no, I think that was my own awareness, but it did take a while. And certainly, 20 years ago, whiskey was a different thing. If you wanted it, you could get it pretty much. There wasn't people queuing outside distilleries at 6 in the morning. The market was a very different place, and I'm not even talking about price. But to my mind, it's really, really changed in the last 3 years. And that's not to say it's like something dramatic has happened. It's just scale, right? Whiskey is really big now. And so I think, and I'm sure there'll be people watching in today whose journeys have just started in the last 3 years. A lot of people have come into whiskey in the last 3 years. Look at someone like Scotch Malt Whisky Society. They're having all sorts of troubles not because they're doing anything differently. You can talk about their website or whatever. It's just that the demand is way, way bigger. There's more and more people who want particular bottles than a single cask can give. And so whiskey is in a very different position. And so I feel quite fortunate that I've broken some aspects, not all, some aspects of my own FOMO before it had got to the level that it is today. Because I think today, if you really allow it to, you're either going to be permanently upset, or you're going to spend a lot of time on the internet just searching and waiting and trying to get things.
And I think it is interesting. There's a couple of topics that I've covered on YouTube in the past, on the vPub as well. And that's there's two things there. When we talk about Scotch Malt Whisky Society, we're speaking about small scale because it's single cask, of course. Same with a lot of in vogue independent bottlers that people enjoy right now. If we talk about Daft Mill, if we talk about Springbank, and if we talk about Bimber, and lots of other new distilleries coming along, Ardnamurchan, another good example, despite the fact that they're actually releasing 17,000 in a batch. It's going quickly. So I've talked about that concept from what you've talked about, the glass loch being one of them, that idea that these full bottles, like the backdrop behind me right now, and I can't use the channel as an excuse all the time because I don't need this as a backdrop, honestly. But everything I've bought with some level of justification, personal or channel focused. So the glass loch is building, and it's building in your house, Matt, and it's building in so many people that's in the community in the lounge tonight. They're building this glass loch. And there's going to be a point at some point in the future that maybe when the prices start to drop, maybe when whiskey isn't quite as let's say, I don't know, exciting. It's difficult to imagine that happening. I mean, this crest never comes, where it's just a constant climb. And there's also the amber rush. The industry is seeing this. And for 12 years more, they've been increasing capacity. They've been building new distilleries. We can't keep count of how many distilleries are producing whiskey in Scotland right now. It's really, really difficult. So all of this is happening at the same time. And a lot of that mature stock from that increased capacity of 10 or 12 years ago is out there now, and it should be at the point where we start to see that coming onto the marketplace. So what do? Is it a case of kind of redressing the balance? What would you say to the completist that wanted everything for a collection? Or what would you say to somebody that really wanted to try these small artisan boutique style distilleries and things? What would you say to them about there's always more whiskey?
How everyone treats whiskey and the enjoyment that they get out of it is entirely down to them. And I don't think it's for anyone else to say you can or cannot enjoy whiskey in a particular way. It's exactly the same as people putting ice in it or enjoying, whiskey with a mixer. As far as I'm concerned, I have whiskeys I enjoy and ways I enjoy more, but that's my whiskey and what you do with yours. So I see it as the same thing. Equally, I would say that if you're looking at someone being completist or sort of really gunning for it that way, I would just say be aware of what you're potentially giving up, in the sense that, assuming that you haven't got the money tree and you can just buy absolutely everything, that if you're focusing on just one thing, by implication, you're not focusing on another. So your whiskey journey, by suggesting that you're going to, have a complete collection of X or Y, is so focused that you're missing out on A, B, and C because you're doing that. So that's not to say that's a negative. It's just be aware that, with focus comes, point rather than broadness. I would also say just be aware of how much time and effort you're putting into it, and is it worth the enjoyment? I would certainly say that I have seen people repeatedly buying things, and I think lockdown, I might talk about this in a minute, lockdown across the world has made this even harder. Life isn't great in many ways right now, and we're all stuck in front of our computers. So I think a lot of people are using that time to either search for whiskies, and certainly when it comes to new distilleries, but the innate desire that you have to have everything is crazy, but it is palpable. Equally, they're using that time to search, to spend that time. And I think it has a warping effect on what whiskey is. I think a lot of people, going back to my earlier point of coming into whiskey in the last 3 years, will see the market now, we'll see social media, we'll see people showing off like the guy at Buffalo Trace, and think that is, that's whiskey. And that will either appeal or it won't.
As a decoration, as a jewellery, as a possession, rather than something that can actually, affect us in a very kind of mortal, organoleptic, real way.
Yeah, but also keeping up with the Joneses. Even if you come into whiskey as a collector, completely fine by me, that you have to somehow compete with someone else who's got a full selection of this. I.e., you come in the last 3 years and you're now up against it to back collect. An impossible task. If you decide that Aaron's your favorite distillery and you want to collect it all, well, good luck for you. What is that, 1,400 bottles or something crazy? And I think that's why people do choose the new distilleries, because they're like, right, I'm here now. It seems palpable. I haven't got to go searching for the old ones. And then they invariably get upset when it quickly gets out of hand, when distillery releases private casks. And obsession is a difficult thing to make, to always keep positive.
That's right, and I think we have to be careful of because if I'm coming at this from a drinker perspective, I don't want anyone out there who is a collector, whether you're just a casual collector or an over accumulator like I am, or whether you are somebody that is completist or much more focused. I am not aiming anything at you here at all, because it's just the different ways that we interact with whiskey, and it's arguable, honestly speaking, that if it wasn't for those collectors, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the collectors of then, we wouldn't be able to try some of the treats that we can today, because they've put them aside, because they've coveted them, because they've preserved them for us to be able to buy or be able to trade and taste whiskies that have passed before. And also, if we are drinking the whiskey, especially if it's limited release, the pool of sealed bottles that remain shrink and become more and more desirable. So it's arguable that the drinkers are playing into that as well, because we're not drinking it and being silent about it. We're sharing and talking about it. We're maybe writing reviews on a blog, or maybe sitting here in front of a camera and talking about it on air. We are all part of this problem. So nobody, please, we're not, I don't think Matt or myself are in any way kind of pointing the finger here. Andrew Butler is saying, and can I just say thank you as well to Phil? He's just joined at Aquavite Barflies. Phil, thank you so much, my friend. Thanks for your support. Andrew's saying, I've been quite lucky, frequenting bars when I'm allowed, that do open daft mills and Bimber, so at least I've been able to try them by the dram. And the great thing about that, Andrew, is that you're trying them. So you're sating that appetite to try the whiskies, but also you're realizing that this is good whiskey. It's good £65 whiskey or £90 whiskey or whatever it may be, but it's not £300 whiskey that you would have to pay to go and get an experience, a full bottle experience on the secondary market. That is a good way, but unfortunately we're all in the same boat, Andrew, and I appreciate what you're saying. We can't really do that easily right now. Peter Hunt is saying, sorry, you're never late, Peter. You're never late for the vPub, don't worry. Doc, Macallan Fine and Rare is saying, being rational. Most of us have chased bottles for years, so we have lots of great stuff on our shelves that was not missed out then. Just relax and remember the law of diminishing returns. Absolutely, wise words, Doc. Helen is saying, if we get one of what we'd like, then so be it. If not, plenty to go here currently. This is the kind of general idea. Listen, it's not going to be that calm all the time. There will be a fervour from time to time.
Only it was.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, honestly, there was in January, because of a sample exchange, I ended up connecting with Glenturret 12, the 2020 maiden release, and I was blown away by it. The 12-year-old YouTube, the vPub was coming up, and I threw this in there, and I used the Glenturret 12 to give that idea that a top 5 just by their age statement is a silly thing to do, isn't it? How do you go 1, 2, 3, 4? If the only thing that connects these single malt whiskies are their age statement, it's silly. You talk about price, you talk about experience, you talk about flavour profile, you talk about what you get from the engagement from the bottle. But I talked that Glenturret 12 up so much that people are coming back to me now saying, really want that bottle, Roy. I love the way you spoke about it. Can't find it. Now, I'm not saying that it was me that sold that out. I'm saying that it was me that got them excited about that in order for them to go pursuing it. So we are all kind of part of this big machine. Matthias Mulder is in. Good to see you, saying last week I opened my first Rosebank. Wow, look at you, expensive bottle, but I had to try it. Wonderful, Matthias. Can I have a wee sample, please? I'm only kidding, my friend. I'm only kidding. And Tyke Croc is saying, I think this is an issue that impacts many forms of collecting, be it the first editions of books, classic vinyl, albums. There are lots of comparisons that you can make there, absolutely, Tyke. But the thing is here is that I think that you can play a record again and again and again, and you can read a book again and again and again. The trouble with whiskey is that there is a finite thing. Once that bottle's opened, the provenance is gone. It's not worth anything, and you have to finish it. And when you finish it, it's kind of gone, isn't it? But I accept absolutely the dynamics are the same. Glenn Duncan is saying if we're all part of the problem, then a solution is surely a moot point. I'm not thinking for a second, Glenn, that we can come up with solutions tonight. But I think the point of tonight is to kind of talk about these things, make awareness part of it, realize that to call somebody a collector, to call somebody somebody that just, I talk about it's not whiskey until it's shared. You don't always have to share your whiskey. If your way to interact with your whiskey is to contemplate and sit alone at home and write notes or do whatever it is you do, then that's perfectly fine too. However you consume, buy or enjoy whiskey is fine. I don't think there are solutions, but I think, as Matt has already pointed, we can become, and I'm seeing myself here, a wee bit obsessive at times. Blair Stevenson is saying, I, as a human, I am a completist and a collector. My whiskey journey has been actively designed to avoid that at times. There are some lines that I stay wide away from. Flora and fauna, for one. That's right, because it's one thing, there's 11 available, easily available today.
Boxes.
Yeah, but the boxes, the white caps, the originals. Do you remember, what's the one that was there was only ever one release? Was it Speyburn? I want to say it was Speyburn.
Speyburn, to my mind, is the most desirable and difficult to obtain of the flora and fauna.
One release, which must be, I think it's about $4,500, the secondary market price for that bottle now.
Speyburn?
Can you imagine that poor whiskey? It's probably perfectly good whiskey in that bottle, but can you imagine having to live up to being worth $4? That's when it becomes an item rather than a liquid to drink. Graham Fraser is saying, for me, it's knowing what my financial limits are. Yes, sometimes it can be a painful reminder, absolutely, Graham. And at auction, being aware that there are many people with deeper pockets than mine, for sure. Falscraft is saying the RN10 was sold out at my favourite supplier 2 weeks after Ralphie declared it Whiskey of the Year. Absolutely, RN10 we've been able to get in plentiful supply for a great price. Ralphie declares it Whiskey of the Year, and suddenly it's going to struggle. It will catch up again, RN10, absolutely. But we are all part of the problem, absolutely. Andrew Pierce is saying lockdown may have made things worse this past year. Plenty of people with time on their hands and obsessed with whiskey and the chase. Absolutely. GD Cami is in. It looks like a new name, DJ, saying whiskey hoarding versus collecting, two different things. Most people are just hoarding stuff, not really collecting. My 2 cents. I would argue that I'm doing a wee bit of both. Not to any extreme, but it's happening, DJ, and I accept that that's an issue sometimes as well. Now, if we collect more than we consume, then at some point in the future that will come back onto the market again. I was able to try recently Lagavulin White Horse, for instance, Lagavulin 16 White Horse. Bought a bottle at auction. I'm going back at 2 or 3 years now, but bought a bottle at auction. Loved it. Loved the experience. Somebody had to hoard that in order for me to be able to do that. Yep. So we're not pointing fingers here. Absolutely, Jimmy. Like I said, I think no matter how you enjoy your whiskey, sharing is always at least as much fun as drinking it. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't agree with that. Absolutely. It's all about sharing. It's all about kind of having those moments, those experiences. Can collectors share? If you're a collector, is it more? You touched on the competitive side of collecting there. Do you think that might come into it? Competitiveness is more than kind of the sharing of it? Or?
No, I think it's both. I mean, if you look at, I'll give you two examples, Roy. I know at least one person who spent the night outside Macallan. That story made the news because it blocked the roads. And, you know, that person would say that the camaraderie of everyone there, you know, was quite the thing, that everyone was there for the same thing. And yeah, you know, for that release, for that Macallan, I don't know how many were opened, not a lot, but there was still community there. They were all there for a reason. Equally, you know, collectors do swap. You know, that there is still, you know, there is still a type of sharing. You're not opening it. It's not my way. I am a hoarder. I've been pretty good this year. I've only bought one bottle. I've bought more mezcal this year than whiskey, but there you go. I'm more of a hoarder, but yeah, I think collectors, that there is a sharing there, and there's also a sharing of knowledge. It's not my sharing, but as you say quite correctly, if someone had drunk all that White Horse, it wouldn't be here. You couldn't have tried it. So, you know, and it's similar when people say, "Oh, auctions, the secondary market, it's evil." Well, okay, I guess, but it's one of the reasons why whiskey is popular now. Let's be clear here. You know, if whiskey didn't have that cachet, a cachet for quality, you know, a cachet for quality of both the past and the present, there'd be a lot of people who would never start that journey. I think it's really, really easy to say, yeah, I need to be mindful of my whiskey journey. I need to be mindful of my budget and my bottles, but at the same time, to all too easy blame people. When I shared the post that I was going to be joining you tonight on Facebook, there was a comment that said, you know, I'm just all over whiskey marketing and hype. And I was very tempted to reply because, you know, I'm a whiskey marketeer. That's what I do. But equally, would you hold it against the business for doing the best job possible to promote their products and get people excited about it? I don't think so. You know, it's what they're there for. You want to get people excited. I
feel that sentiment sometimes, and when you feel that, that's when you know you're starting to feel a wee bit jaded by things, and it's time to actively. And it sounds like that comment you've made, somebody's made an active recognition there and said, okay, and I'm probably just going, okay, I need to step back from that because I'm getting a bit fed up from that right now. And I have, when you talked about the Macallan thing there, I remember that you're talking about the Genesis release a few years ago. They had, the irony there was that spun into a huge press story. And there was even more kudos brought to the brand there. This is how desperate people are for these Macallan releases, because it blocks roads and things. I remember that at the time. But I also remember that people that queued and people that arrived there to buy the bottle because it looked like the marketing in advance suggested there was going to be enough released, were turned away and disappointed. Some people were pragmatic. Others were really quite upset. Now, there's a couple of things at play there. You could blame Macallan for the messaging in advance. But do you ever uncover or feel yourself, or have you ever witnessed scenes of entitlement, perhaps, when people inevitably miss out?
Yeah, sure. Quite directly, and it's what
I said we were going to talk about some crunchy things, and it's
no. Quite directly, when I wrote that post that inspired my Ardbeg 5-year-old Wee Beastie, it's actually not really related to the Wee Beastie. I tie it in to say the Wee Beastie is a core release, and as such, you know, don't get your knickers in a twist. If you want some, get some. Stop sending it to auction. There's going to be more of it. But what inspired that was actually it was the not 100% successful release of a Bimber partnership with Selfridges. It just didn't go well in terms of their communication. And yeah, I got a lot of people who I don't know sending me PMs on Facebook, and they were pretty shitty, you know, and pretty personal. that was not a great week because I was trying just to say, look, this is the information that we as the distillery have about this release, which is not ours. You know, the liquid is sold. It's been sold to Selfridges. They're managing that release. I understand you want to get hold of it. I'm trying to pass on as much information as we've got. Don't shoot the messenger. But yeah, I mean, that's where this sort of idea of fury of missing out, you know, people don't just get upset by it. They get angry and they're looking for someone to blame. I think sometimes distilleries shoot themselves in the foot though. Whilst I do think that building up hype is fundamentally a brand doing its job, at the same time, artificially implying that something is limited when it isn't, that's below the line for me. You know, if you're saying it's a limited edition of 250,000 bottles, you can still buy them. You know, that's pushing it for me. And on the other side, deliberately limiting supply so that it does sell out, so that you do build hype. Those are not necessarily practices which I'm particularly keen on. But yeah, it's really difficult when passion boils over and becomes anger. Though what I would say, in my experience, that you see a lot of people who are upset, and I've been there myself. I'm particularly upset when I have something in the basket, and you know, similar to a lot of e-commerce systems, you're like, well, I've got it, and you don't got it, and
or you check out and you pay for it, and you think yes, and then you get the email.
Yeah,
sorry, our system didn't keep up. You didn't get your bottle.
That's really annoying, and I've been there, and I've been annoyed by that. But the people who I feel get the most annoyed, and the people who are rude about it, are, in my opinion, from what I've experienced, they're the flippers. They're the people who, the reason why they want the bottle is because it's a business for them. It's because they want to profit on it. And I've certainly seen that with Bimber, that the people who have directed hate at me, which is bizarre. I don't control what the price is and how you get the bottle. I just tell you all about it and try to make it sound exciting and answer all your questions.
Bimber 40,000 litres a year. Is that Matt McKay's fault? Clearly, I noticed that sometimes my audio is coming back at me a wee bit through your. Maybe just turn. I don't know if you can turn down my volume just a wee bit. As long as you can hear me, Matt, it's fine. It might help.
Hear you fine, mate.
If anybody, by the way, in the lounge tonight is interested, there's a bottle that maybe they're not getting their hands on, they're missing out on it, and they're looking for another recommendation, something either similar or with a. Then Matt and I put us on the spot tonight and ask us to recommend some available alternatives that isn't going to completely replace it, of course not, but it might be a reasonable and available alternative. So ask in the lounge tonight and try and get our attention. We're going to talk about a couple of bottles that we have on hand as well to share just with people to say, look, here's some bottles you might want to consider. As drinking whiskies, they do a very good job. They're available and at a reasonable price. Richard Agnew is shouting, community, community, community. Fellowship, kindness, putting people first, inclusivity, all the positive sides of community, Richard. Absolutely, I agree with you fully. Graham Fraser is saying, I'm always amazed by folk who are obsessive about collecting every bottle from a distillery. Seems to affect Islay lovers most. It can. We'll get onto that a wee bit when we talk about alternatives for Islay as well, I think, Graham. Rossford is in as well. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, Thomas. The cast strength Mackie Bay from Kilhoman has started me down the Kilhoman path for the next few bottles. By all means, enjoy that path, enjoy that journey, Thomas, but tread carefully. Awareness, of course. Kilhoman are doing a great product. Lots of people love it. Lots of people have connected with and started to collect Kilhoman. And that's perfectly fine. But I am suspicious, Thomas. You and I have met. I'm suspicious that you are there for the enjoyment, for the sipping of it. Chase saying auctions are only a problem because people make it a problem. Another cynical thing, I think, something that should perhaps stop, Matt, I don't know if you would agree with me, that people that buy and have it shipped direct to auction, that shouldn't be permitted by any retailer to have an auction house as a delivery address. But then again, you could argue that some people are using the auction house for international shipping and things. Maybe, I'm not sure.
It's so tough, Roy. I mean, the one that the one that I've never really understood is we will send it directly to the auction house. We'll even pick it up for you at the Isla Festival. You've stood in the queue, you've stood in the Bowmore queue overnight on your deck chair, and the van is there, and you just walk over to the van and load it in. And economics is economics. I get it. It's
businesses are businesses. Yeah,
it's pretty depressing. I mean, I think there is a question of scale, and that's when I often find that my line is, if one person wants to do that, okay, whatever. I mean, you've stood outside for 12 hours. I wouldn't even do that, mate, to be honest. Sorry. I'd be in the whiskey bar trying all the drams rather than sitting out in a car park. But everyone's different. But then I remember a few years ago, I was a couple of years ago when we could go to whiskey festivals. I was at London Whiskey Show, and there was a guy at the very front of the queue, had been there to get in at the beginning of the show. And throughout the sort of queue, members of his family and extended family gradually sort of just joined him at the front of the queue. Okay, well, people cut in with groups and whatever, that's fine. But then what happened next, I've never seen in my life. There was a sort of bun fight over to the tills to get all the, chichiboos and distillery exclusives. And the whole family went in and went to till 1 and bought one of everything they were allowed. That's fine. And I know they're all going to auction and whatever. But then they went to till number 2 because there was a pillar in the way. And they did the same. And then till number 3. And so effectively, this one guy managed to get, 12 of each. It was pretty awful. I'm certain when the whiskey show comes back, having told them about this, that they will be all over it. But it shows you the lengths that some people will go to. And for me, there is a difference between having a bottle and potentially falling on hard times. You look over the last year, people are losing their jobs. And who are we to judge that, you needed to liquidate some of your accumulation to get you through. And so it's hard to judge people. But when you see such blatant behavior like that, which is clearly not within any type of spirit at all, then yeah, I'm not impressed.
I have to say that next week's vPub as well is going to be a slightly mild continuation, but a slightly different take on it as well, with Arthur Motley, who's the buyer for. He's a hugely passionate whiskey guy as well. He's doing a really exciting project that I can't wait to share with everybody next week. I think it's absolutely brilliant. But he's also been a buyer for Royal Mail Whiskies and SMWS for the last 20 years. And he is very, very passionate about exactly the topics that we are talking about. And he's proposed some ideas and solutions that in some way circumvent some of the more cynical sides of what we're talking about. So we'll be talking about that a wee bit on next week's vPub. But what's in your glass tonight, Matt? What are you actually sipping on? Sure. Are you sipping on something that's available? Are you sipping on something that's hard to get? What do you have?
So I'll show you what I got, and then I'll tell you why I've selected it. So I have, this is from L'Auguste. This is Speyside Selection 11. And this is simply entitled Speyside 1988 Blended Malt 29-year-old.
Wow.
It's not necessarily cheap, it's not 50 quid bottle. I think I paid £130 for it from Whiskey Based Shop, something like that.
About a 29-year-old, did you say there?
We're speaking about a 29-year-old that's just listed as a Speyside blended malt. And the reason why I've got this is because if you do a bit of research, you can get some great whiskey. And the reason why I think this is a great whiskey is because what this is, it's a blended malt because it's teaspooned. This is Burnside, which is Balvenie. It's 29-year-old Balvenie, right? That's what it is. But because it's not called 29-year-old Balvenie, and because the label is frankly functional, not beautiful, that's why it cost me £140. So I brought this not necessarily because it might still be available, I don't know. But I brought this because it's indicative of what I think people who do find themselves getting FOMO for big brands should look at. And it's looking at, things that are just as good. Frankly, it's exactly the same. But because it doesn't have that mark label, because it's not an original bottling, because it is simply listed as a blended malt, that actually you can get amazing value. 29-year-old Balvenie, for all intents and purposes. I can't even imagine what they'd charge for VAT. That's got to be, they'd charge $1,000 surely, at least. So yeah, that's the,
And
the
the
other
one
reason
thing
I
about
bought it.
that is that there's a certain comfort in being able to just relax with friends and enjoy that, and not worry about being tiny little pours. To be precious about it. You're going to be able to relax and say, "This is a 29-year-old malt whiskey I'm sharing with you. Let's just sit and enjoy it."
And it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. It's a lovely whiskey. So yeah, I mean, my sort of selection is not necessarily because it's super available and not chasey. It's sort of to point people and say, if you're prepared to think outside the box and move away from, the obvious brands and the obvious bottlers, there is always more whiskey, and there's some fantastic whiskey out there, which is exactly the same in terms of the level of quality as the things that people are fighting over.
Absolutely. Andrew Butler is saying, I've got a 22-year-old Ward Head, similar idea. So Ward Head is the Glenfiddich version of Matt's Burnside. And these are just trade names when they're cask trading as part of the Scotch landscape. And in order to protect their individual brands, they have, when they trade the whiskey, they go under a different name. So that's how these come about. And Andrew is probably loving a 22-year-old Glenfiddich for a fraction of the price.
Nice.
And the practice of teaspooning, I'm not sure that there's any teaspooning actually happens, but as long as it's written down in paper and suggested that it has, it can't be sold as a single malt. It becomes a blended malt. I think it should just be called malt whiskey, but I've been banging on about that for months now. Graham Young has bought me a dram. Graham, you star over in Canada, saying, great discussion. So many good whiskies, so little time. Share, geek out the details and laugh. That's my whiskey journey. Absolutely, Graham. Let's raise a wee glass to that and say thank you very much for your drama, friend. Cheers to you, Graham. His friend is Gino, and I saw them both, not physically on their jets, or their skidoos, I think they call them, their snowmobiles, but I saw them both sharing pictures, so they've obviously had decent snow over in Canada, and they're getting out and about and having fun on those. Ryan Sutherland is saying, great chat, guys, and great to see a Burnside getting some love. I'll catch up the remainder tomorrow as lack of sleep is catching up. Ryan, get some sleep, and maybe when you catch up tomorrow, you'll find some timestamps down below as well. Good summary. So you've got a Burnside, a 29-year-old Burnside. That was a nice call. I never asked you in advance what you had. That's a very good, interesting call. I've got something that I've been banging on about for a while now, but I really am compelled to talk about this more. I've got some lovely Clynelish. I'm very fortunate to have been in love with Clynelish for a few years now. So you accumulate. Now, I have to say that most of it is open because I'm obsessed with the stuff.
Good man.
But Clynelish, and I'm part of the problem, has become more and more difficult to get. Now, Clynelish is a big facility, but there's not much that's carved off for malt's sake. So while some independents have decent depths of stock and things like that, the releases are getting more and more expensive, certainly for the mature stuff. So it's harder to find Clynelish at a reasonable price anymore. And each time that there is a price increase, yes, it's justified, it's about demand, we're all part of the problem, we accept that these are businesses. But it means that the whiskey is having a harder time living up to the price point. You're putting more pressure on the whiskey because it costs you more and you're expecting it to deliver more. I would say if you're struggling to get Clynelish and you're struggling to justify the prices for Clynelish, but you're still looking for a nice, waxy, fruity style of whiskey with that lovely texture too, and you're looking for some maturity about it as well, don't look any further than Deanston 18. Yes, I've talked about it before. It was in my consideration for Whiskey of the Year last year. It was in a lineup with some other 18-year-olds, and I was really, I found it compelling. I have to say that each glass I pour, and it's what I'm sipping on right now, I seem to enjoy this whiskey more and more. I think the age is there. I think it's modern Deanston. The quality is there. It's presented naturally, that wonderful age statement at 18 years, 46.3%, unchill filtered as well. It's exclusively ex-bourbon in here. There's no sherry cask involvement in an 18-year-old as well. So if you like that style of whiskey, I think it's going to be right up your street. I'll go one further. I'll say that you could put this in a similarly aged lineup with Clynelish's. And I think even if you could pick it out and tell it apart, maybe you've got a much, much better palate than mine. Blind, you would have to accept that it's damn good whiskey. I picked this one up on offer for £55. It's typically about £70, but for an 18-year-old whiskey of this quality, I think it's a cracking buy. Whiskey Malt Content, it's Vlad is saying, great vPub today. Cheers to you guys, and cheers to you too, Vlad, my friend. Slancheva, cheers.
I'd go one further than you, Ryan. I'd say Deanston is an amazing pick right now, because let's see what Distel do with their whole portfolio, remembering that their portfolio covers Bunnahabhain and Tobermory. And those distilleries have seen quite hefty price increases. Bunnahabhain, its popularity has always been quite strong, but it's exploded. Whereas the Deanston's currently still owned by the same group, still made in the same way, but they're not yet bubbling along and sort of exploding. So I would say it's a great whiskey to get into right now. Good quality and some good prices to be had, especially compared to the sort of sister distilleries of Bunnahabhain.
Yeah, and I think that the core range from Deanston is very good value and well priced. I think we've started to see Deanston's go up in price a little bit is the kind of smaller scale release. The finishes, distillery exclusives back when you could walk into a distillery, I appreciate. And some of those prices and releases have gone up a wee bit, and I've been wary of that. So it becomes then whereas 2 years ago, a year ago, we were really confident about just buying blindly, honestly. Deanston, it was almost like it didn't matter what cask you put it into, there was something wonderful to enjoy. But I think now it's some of the more expensive ones is certainly try before you buy. However, I'm confident in the 12-year-old, Ralphie's Whiskey of the Year of a couple of years ago as well. So Deanston is starting to get some love. It deserves it. The 18-year-old is really coming into its own now. I've got an older Deanston 18-year-old as well, and I'm going to do I'm going to open both bottles fresh. I won't compare an opened and a sealed. Maybe for a vPub at some point in the future, an old 18 and a contemporary 18, just to see if it's me that's changing or is it indeed the whiskey that's improving, in my subjective opinion, of course. Hamid Ivor is saying I couldn't agree with Matt more. Deanston is fantastic. It's just a little expensive here in Florida. It's $65. $65, I would imagine that's the 12-year-old Deanston. Hammy, I know that you've tried it and you've paid that money for it. And you're probably comparing it to its peers at that price and what else you've got over there. But I think $65, because you're getting that unchill filtered experience at the higher ABV at 46.3%, some of the other 12-year-old at $65 is going to be 40 or 43%, probably chill filtered. So it's a slightly different experience. I'm sure you're already doing those comparisons yourself. Drinks Whiskey is saying Virgin Oak in a Deanston 18. No, it's mostly refill and first fill. There's no Virgin Oak used. Deanston Virgin Oak, by the way, is a non-age statement whiskey. If you can get it at a good price, again, a fabulous whiskey where the spirit is bold enough, bizarrely bold enough. You think Deanston isn't a bold spirit. There's a weight and body to Deanston, a lot of malt and heavy cereal texture, and it takes that Virgin Oak cask. And that remember, the Virgin Oak is relatively young compared to the 12 and the 18. It takes it really quite well. And if you like a sweet whiskey, if you're maybe somebody that dabbles in bourbon and enjoys bourbon, you'll love Deanston Virgin Oak, especially with the weight of that ABV as well. Brian Mitchell bought me a dram as well, saying last two vPubs have knocked it out the park. Slanchuvaroy. Brian, you can come again, my friend. Thank you very much for the dram. Cheers, Brian. Thank you. So I think it's time that we shared something else too. There's a bit of a clamour, and you're part of the problem as well, Mark, Matt at Bimber.
Yeah.
Because of the limited supply from these smaller new distilleries. And I have to say, I feel sorry for them as well, because when they're starting out and they're laying down their capital, they have no vision how well their whiskey is going to be received. They hope that they're going to make the whiskey taste as nice as they imagine. It's almost impossible, even when you're selling the youngest possible whiskey. It's still going to be at least 3 years old. How can you predict 3 years down the road how much demand there's going to be? It's almost impossible. But what would we say to somebody that's after an Ardnamurchan or a Bimber or one of these new kind of vibrant, interesting new distilleries that's coming along? Where would they go? I can't buy a Bimber now. I used to be able to go on and as long as, even in the early days, you still had to be in there in the first couple of days.
I love how you're talking about the early days when we've been bottling for 12 months.
That's right.
That shows you that I've done something.
In the early days of release.
Them days,
it was 2019, wasn't it?
We first started bottling at the end of 2019. So we've been bottling, you know, and if you factor in COVID, and we didn't bottle anything for 4 months because we couldn't get any glass. We've been bottling for a year. Yeah, them days.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, one of the wonderful things that I had to have you on, and it's not like we have to have a discussion to say, Matt, you're on here as Matt McKay of the Dramble, and you're not on here as Matt of Bimber, but it doesn't matter. You've got nothing to sell.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the spirit does all the talking. And if, you know, for any of these new distilleries, if you haven't got a sound spirit, you ain't going to last long, frankly. There's so much good whiskey out there. Even if we move away from what we're talking about, this sort of chasey stuff, if you just look at what whiskey is out there and what people spend their money on, if your spirit isn't good, I just don't think you're going to last. And whilst I don't think there's going to be some type of 1980s crash, I really don't. I think at some point prices might level off for some things, but I cannot. And that's a whole nother topic that you'll have to invite me back on in a couple of years to talk about. But I'm convinced that there will not be some massive whiskey lot crash. At the same time, there is a lot of young whiskey out there, and there's going to be even more of it. And I do wonder how much of a market there is for 3 to 5 year old whiskey. At the moment, loads. But yeah, 5 years time, you know, when all those people have gone, yeah, I've tried all this whiskey and some of it was better than others, and I like this and I didn't like that. Hey, do you want some more 3 year old whiskey? No, that was so 2021, mate. I've moved on. Let's see. But at the moment, yeah, the market for young whiskey is so high, and a lot of them, some of them are quite big. You know, even in English, if you look at the capacity of, you know, Lakes and Spirit of Yorkshire, they're not nothing. Bimber, yeah, I mean, we're sort of 45,000 litres a year. It's tiny, you know, it's a sort of Daft Mill type size. We are looking at increasing capacity. There's a new still being bought. But let's be clear, even putting in a wash still that's twice the size, that doesn't make twice as much whiskey, right? It sounds like it should. The still is twice the size. But to make twice as much whiskey, your whole plant, all of your plant needs to be doubled. So you'd need, you know, another mash tun or twice as many massives, another 7 fermenters. You have to double everything to double.
That's where balanced versus unbalanced distillation plays a part. How you start to try and rush things and change things. Absolutely, and it's again it's that idea that we can't always point the finger at the distilleries or the suppliers. However, I do have to say that I did detect some language in a tasting last year that was talking about there was some kind of disgust about their product. They're putting it out there at a reasonable price. They said, I'm not going to mention the distillery because it's not important to talk about it. It's just a concept. But they talked about how the prices were just crazy in the secondary market, and that's terrible, and how they felt that they should have some of that margin and things. And I thought, sorry. If you're a producer, you just produce. You can't control the secondary market. If you start to chase secondary market prices, you know, bank accounts, wallets, people have short memories. Our palates have short memories too. We have long memories. We remember these things. And also that idea that they pretend that they don't like that happening, but they do kind of wallow a wee bit in the reflected glory that kudos brings, that there is a clamour for the product. But I think it's okay to admit that.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
What did frustrate me, Matt, and I think you'll pick up on this. There was a social media discussion, of course, it always is nowadays, when we're not face to face. But there was a bit of a conflict between some people talking about product, and Nc'Nean came into the discussion. Somebody said that they were enjoying themselves with a Nc'Nean, and somebody else quipped after it, hardly flying off the shelves, is it? So they were judging Nc'Nean to their neighbours Ardnamurchan, to the Daft Mills, perhaps to Bimbers, to lots of other new whiskies that's out there that people are chasing. Nc'Nean batch 1 sold out very fast, and they brought forward batch 2. And when that sold out, they brought forward batch 3, and they brought forward batch 4. they're doing this sustainably. They're doing all their other fantastic things. They've got product that they can sell at a young age, and they're also making product that they're going to mature for much longer. Nc'Nean are doing wonderful things that people need to talk about. Just because it's available, suddenly people are judging it as somehow an inferior whiskey.
Failure, yeah.
Which is heartbreaking when they're doing what we're asking.
That goes back to where we started, Roy, that people are coming into the whiskey market with all sorts of warped views.
Yeah.
And it is a warped view to say that you're a new distillery, and if you haven't sold out in 2 minutes, that you're some type of failure because someone else has, without looking at all the other factors, particularly capacity, style. I mean, that's a bit perverse, really, and especially without the knowledge. It's frankly an ill-knowledgeable statement, because I don't know of any real whiskey that has come on from a new distillery in the last 12 months that the first batch hasn't gone bonkers, frankly. I can think of a few over the last 5 years where it hasn't gone well, and a couple of those distilleries are now making honey or doing other things. But certainly in the last 12 months, inaugural batches are inaugural batches, and people rightly or wrongly go mental for it. But that is not a point of comparison, in my opinion, nor should it be something that necessarily is a press release from a distillery. Going back to your previous point, I have no problems in sitting here and saying, there's a feeling when you see Bimber bottles and people getting really excited about them and putting money on them on the secondary market, that gives some sort of good feeling, because it shows demand. But equally, we do want people to open their bottles, and we do try to encourage that as much as possible. So it's that double-edged sword that you want to be successful, but you've only got a limited supply. But I think just saying no, we never like seeing that, I think that's disingenuous. No one wants to see their whiskey on auction being sold for less than the producer was selling it. No one wants to see that. So I think you've got to be honest about it.
If that's the honest, take the success for sure.
Yeah, you got to take the success for what it is.
Peter Morris is saying, I'd be a little more careful predicting less demand for young whiskey ahead. It presumes that some whiskies don't suit a younger presentation, e.g. young peated drams. Peter, you're absolutely right. And I think that what's interesting, the point that you make, is that education, that acceptance, that idea that 10 years ago we were up in arms about too many non-age statement whiskies coming out there. We didn't know the age of the product. Now we're seeing lots of non-age statement, and we know that it's very, very young, and we still are embracing it. But these are whiskies that are being made in a different way, that's only being made for the single malt market. They're not being made for contract. They're never going to be part of a blend or a bigger brand. It's just about that. So it's very different. So the age is very much in that context. But I would agree, absolutely. The shackles of age have kind of been loosened a lot. But it looks like, from what we've just talked about, Nc'Nean, if you're looking to engage with a young, vibrant, new release on the market, have you tried Nc'Nean, Matt?
I tried their spirit a few times at my local whiskey festival when I was able to get there at Harrow. I don't chase inaugural releases anymore because of what we're talking about. So I haven't actually tried their finished product, but I've tried a fair few of their spirits. They were around doing lots of try A, try B, and vote and things like that. So I'm certainly aware of their spirit, but not the finished thing.
Okay, I'll send you down a wee sample.
Oh, what a gem.
You can try before you buy. I'll send you a couple of other things as well. But that would be my recommendation if you are looking to get your head around some of these new kind of vibrant, eager distilleries. Then there are some available still. Nc'Nean have done wonders in bringing forward their releases. I hope that they've got long-term sustainability there in terms of you would have to think that they're running a tight business, that they've got plenty of stock for the future. But they did amazing things in pulling forward their release schedule. And making hay while the sun shines as a business, honestly speaking, because the payback on capital for a whiskey business model, a distillery business model, is a long thing. Alistair Gray is saying, very grateful to Matt and Philip Story's SMWS reviews. Looking forward to things going back to normal so they can do more.
Oh, me too. It's been a long time since I've been able to. I mean, and they don't send out samples. You have to go into the venue, and actually that's kind of part of the fun, to go into the society, see what's going on, to see Phil. And so, yeah, I can't wait to get back in there and to resume doing some writing about what they're putting out. Yeah, at the moment it's all change. It's cues. It's actually my next dram that I'll talk about in a bit with Roy as a sort of alternative is an SMWS bottle, and it's the only bottle I've bought this year. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's going to be an interesting one. First Fill Whisky is asking from New Zealand, when can I expect Bimber in New Zealand? A couple of years?
It's a good question. I can honestly say no idea. Hopefully as soon as possible. I'm not going to spill any sort of big secrets today about it, but we are looking at what we can do to get more whiskey into the hands of people, and more whiskey that they are absolutely going to open. So without sort of using this platform with Roy as a sort of work platform for it's not, I'm here to chat as me. Yeah, watch this space. We are mindful that people want to try it, and we're going to try our best to help you. Hey,
Phil, you get no Bimber until we get some New Zealand distilleries in the whiskey in the Northern Hemisphere, okay? You can't. It's a bi-directional thing, buddy. Whiskey Novice is saying at least you guys are talking distilleries, releasing their own whiskey. I know where he's going with this. I still have a huge beef, Jim's in Northern Ireland, with these young Irish distilleries releasing sourced whiskies. It's farcical. Well, they can either make gin, they can either release new age or unaged spirit, or they can use the sourced model. Now, I think that the sourced model is actually okay, Jim, but I think what you're getting at there is that there's sometimes a wee bit of underhanded, the branding and things going on. They need to be transparent. This is not our whiskey. For Rassi, for example, it was clear they said, while we wait, here's some sourced whiskey. And we would kind of like this. This is kind of some of the profile that we're going for. This is whiskey that we admire. This is the standard that we will be judged by, but it's not our whiskey. They didn't brand it Isle of Rassi. I think that's what you're getting at there, Jim, and I think you've got a fair point. Graham Fraser is saying, wonder if flippers will embrace the current no canister campaign. Interesting. I don't know how many other distilleries are doing that. I applauded Nc'Nean for that. Nc'Nean, we're going to give you some money off if you choose not to take the tube. I noticed Brookladdy have stepped up, although the price is the same, and that idea of cutting down on unnecessary packaging, and that's going to certainly appeal to somebody who's just drinking and feels guilt about just tossing the tube or canister anyway. Menno is saying multi-mission now. That's a plan aquavitae. We want that Aussie and Kiwi whiskey. Again, the scale down there is like the scale of Bimber. It's so small that it's going to be tough to encourage that to happen. But, we have to realize that patience is something that whiskey teaches you, I think. Slow down a wee bit and it's a necessary part of it all. And Phil is saying, haha, true that. I need to get you to try some Cardrona whiskey. I'd love to try some. I've never tried any Cardrona. I'll offer up my next alternative. Again, it's appeared on a vPub before. I'm going to hammer it home again because I think it's compelling. And I used a blind challenge to prove it as well. Aberlour Abuna used to be at ours for £50, Matt. Do you remember the days?
Days, Waitrose special offer, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was sub £50 in Waitrose regularly. The days. But then obviously there was quite a huge jump in price there. And that's difficult because it causes people to pause. And it sometimes kind of means that people need to rejudge the whiskey because they're not judging it just based on flavour anymore. They're looking at it against the peers on the shelf, the other whiskies that's available at that price point. And it's jarring for people, especially the seasoned people who have bought into that, buying it batch after batch. Regardless, Aberlour Abuna is still a fantastic prospect, does a very, very unique and powerful thing. There was almost an inevitability that price would jump up, and it still sells. However, as an alternative, if you're struggling to see or pay the price for Aberlour Abuna, if you're struggling to get it where you are, what I'm going to show you now is cask strength, exclusively sherry matured whiskey for £55 that came second in the blind challenge that we did before Christmas, only behind the £120 teapot dram. And that's Aaron's sherry cask. Now, this is non-age statement. If anybody's watching James MacArthur back when he appeared on the vPub last year, he told us the age of the whiskey. He told us that this was aged in American oak ex-sherry hogsheads. It's not chill filtered. It says on the label, non-chill filtered. It's natural colour. Arran sherry cask, £55 in the UK. I hope it's reasonably priced where you are. If you're in Germany or the Netherlands, you're laughing. You're going to get it even cheaper than that, no doubt. But this is wonderfully juicy, delicious sherry cask whiskey. Yes, it doesn't have all that heavy, dry, spicy tannins that you might get from maybe European oak or whatever, but that sherry thing is here. The sweetness and the juiciness is amped up a little bit, and it's bold and vibrant, and it brings lots of grip and texture because of that high ABV as well. This one is 55.8%. For £55, it fills that slot very, very nicely. Have you tried this one, Matt?
I have. I was over at Arran. It was pissing with rain. It was not a nice time. But it was literally the weekend that the new branding came out. So I think I might have been one of the first people in the world to try that in its new livery. They were just arriving at the distillery, and they were very nice. They hosted us there. They took us down to Lag, which I'm super excited to see how the sort of the heavier side to what Arran are doing at the new distillery at the south of the island. If you've not been, when you're able to, I'd strongly recommend the island. It is, yeah, I mean, it's often called Scotland in miniature. And if you drive all the way around, which you can, there's a ring road, you'll pass the same cars over and over again. I would thoroughly recommend it. Yeah, it's a good whiskey, Roy, and yeah, good price, hopefully where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your next bottle then.
Sure. So my next bottle goes, and those who know me won't be in any way surprised by this distillery. But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with a comment around the price and the availability of Islay whiskey. I
can predict your distillery.
Yeah, I'm sure you can because you read my website. So peated whiskey is popular. It's my preferred style. I mean, my natural preferred style of whiskey would be refill ex-bourbon with some peat. Doesn't have to be a lot of peat, but with some peat. If I had to desert island style refill ex-bourbon peated, that's kind of where I'm at. That doesn't mean I don't taste absolutely everything. I do and enjoy it, but that's kind of a go-to. But yeah, Islay whiskey, if you take Caol out of the sort of the LPA, out of the equation, look at how much whiskey that island is producing at the moment, at least until the Whiskey Exchange distillery opens. It's quite big. It's not a lot of whiskey. You know, you compare that to Speyside, to Highlands, they're bigger places. They have more distilleries. But nevertheless, peated style, Islay peated style is super popular for what it is. And so there's just not a lot of it. And with not a lot comes a premium and all the other things we've been talking about, chasing, limited editions, distillery marketing, etc. So this is always my alternative. I still love my Islay drams. I have a lot of time for Monia, Peter Bunner, for Ardbeg, for all the things. But my go-to, my whiskey of choice, virtually always, is Lechig. So this is the whiskey I've bought this year. This is 4253. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's either mole metal or mole mental, depending on whether you pronounce the bracketed N or not. 12-year-old refill ex-bourbon hogshead, 60.2%. And yeah, it's everything that you want from a Lechig. It's when it's straight up, it's full on, meaty, burnt, but with a little bit of water, you're getting all of that natural sweetness out of that distillate. If you've not tried it, I'm sure most of you who join on Roy's chats will be well aware of Lechig. But for me, it's where I'm at naturally. And it's also, I think, a really good alternative to Islay drams in terms of not necessarily the same style of peat, but in terms of having some pretty impactful peat about it. I mean, this Lechig here, it's not messing around with its ABV and it's not messing around with the peat. It's a full-on whiskey, this one, which at 11:30 is just what I want.
And I think that it's interesting you blindsided me away, but I'd assumed you were going in a different direction with that discussion.
Did you?
I listened.
What were you guessing?
I'll get to that. I did think that you were going to plump for Caol because you've been very vocal about your support for Caol and its consistency and its solid, reliable.
I can see why you'd say that. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Now, as soon as you started to talk about Lechig, I got that immediately. And the thing is that we talk about broad brushly speaking that Lechig is a slightly different peated style, but sometimes when I sip it blind, it can be in isolation, indistinguishable from the Isla style. It's very, very, very close. Sometimes it's a bit more kind of aromatic, a bit more kind of rich, a bit more kind of slightly farmy at times. But for me, I'm regularly raving about the official release, the 10-year-old, 46.3% unchilled filtered as well. 35, 40 pounds. There's nothing to argue about there. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And the example you make, maybe not that SMWS bottle that you hold up there, but there's lots of Lechik available through indies right across the spectrum. So you don't, and it's the modern Lechik. I'd say if it's more than 20 years old, try before you buy. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah. No, even less than 20, I'd say, Roy. Modern Lechik, I think, is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Older bottles, totally try before you buy. It doesn't taste the same at all. It doesn't ever have that power of peat. And if you go back and try some of the 70s stuff, which is epic, it's nothing like this at all. Spot on advice, Roy. Spot on.
Yeah. Whiskey Mystery Phil is saying, I know in today's prices, if you could go back in time, would you stock up for flipping, not drinking? Evil question, Phil. Yes. Come on. But we would do something good with the money, right? We would put it to good use. We wouldn't just squirrel it away and we wouldn't squander it. I think that's a natural, and it's not an evil question, Phil, because one of the biggest things that gets you right here when you see a 20-year-old price list is like, oh wow, if only I had the foresight, if only I had a time machine. So that's typical of Phil thinking like that, not because he's necessarily evil, but you can just imagine him being quite a critical thinker in that way and thinking, what would we do? What would we do? And it's kind of a way of flipping the mirror a little bit, isn't it? To just kind of have us look at ourselves and understand if we were given an opportunity to make really good money on whiskey, would we? And I think the natural answer is we're people and we have families and we have ambitions and desires.
I mean, just look at like the movies and how many films about time travel, when they go back, how many films, even Back to the Future, with the almanac, you have the opportunity to know what's going to happen. A lot of people would take it. I'm sitting there, I'm like, would I? Yeah, of course I would. I'd buy Hanyo's playing cards when you could pick them up for 70 quid a bottle. They were, I'm not joking, mate. They were gathering dust in Japan.
Ralphie told a story recently on the podcast that they did with Whiskey in the Six and a Sipper Social Club. Ralphie was talking about walking down the West End of Glasgow and just in a regular grocers, they had the rare malts of the Diageo rare malts releases. Sure. On the shelf there, the weight of the shelf was bowing under the weight of all this whiskey that they weren't really selling, and it was sub 100.
I mean, such an interesting story with the rare malts in that they were all effectively the result of the whiskey lock, in that they were thrown into what was seen as knackered wood, just to do something with them. But it turns out that actually, if you leave a lot of them, and it's why they've all got quite big age statements on, you leave a lot of them for that length of time, the quality of spirit was sufficient enough that the whiskies, not all of them, but a lot of them in that selection are fantastic. And so what was a product of a bit of a panic of just kind of throwing something together actually has resulted in, one of the most famous selections of whiskey ever. So when people say, oh, it's knackered wood, sure, but if you leave it long enough, if your spirit's good things might happen.
Well, that's exactly one of the things that we talked about with Graham Unson last week. And nobody can convince me that one of the reasons that Port Ellen or Brora, for that matter, became legendary wasn't the fact that it was kind of just forgotten about for so long and it was left to do its own thing in relatively quiet casks and just blossom like nobody imagined that it could. Jimmy Legacy and Roy, can you ask him about Brora, please? So there you go. I mean, Brora, even the legendary Brora can't live up to the joining price now, correct?
Correct. I mean, it's a whiskey. I've probably tasted Brora maybe half a dozen times. I've tasted Port Ellen a lot more. It doesn't cross my table very often. I'm not prepared to spend that type of money on any whiskey from anywhere. It's just outside my budget. My budget is not with it there. Is it really good? Yeah, it can be absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those things. It's social media makes it, as I said at the beginning, makes it look like, this is what whiskey should be. And I feel that now Brora, Port Ellen, some other whiskies like that, some particular bottlings. I don't get too jealous when I see other people go, I got this. It's invariably closed. So as far as I'm concerned, you ain't got much. You've got something, you might sell it or look at it or stick some candles up and do a little shrine. But you know, I've let go of that FOMO because I can't afford that. So yeah, I just put it back of mind. Is it really good? Yes. Would I happily buy it for a good price? Yes. Am I excited when it's around? Yes. Do I think about it and dream about it at night? No.
I have to say, we're a wee bit different there. I have tried Broras. I have been fortunate to have Brora in the house. Not a particularly good one, a 1980s one, a much cheaper one, but still far too expensive. Old and Rare Show, you have the chance to touch and
all of them.
These Broras. I've been involved in tastings. I've been gifted things. It's let me taste and understand that it was fantastic whiskey and still not worth 4-figure prices. Come on, it's ridiculous. However, there was a time I made a promise to myself that I will own a bottle of Brora, and I'm going to get defensive, but it's a true story. It will sound defensive, but year by year, that bottle of Brora that I promised myself, the prices were not stabilizing or dropping. You know, they're going up and they're going up and up, and then you kind of go, I don't think it's going to happen. And it's really funny. I shared it on a lock-in with patrons actually. I pulled out this bottle of Brora that I've since bought, and in it is a note from my son that was inside my birthday card last year for when I turned 50. And he didn't write happy birthday. He wrote, Dad, I will make it my life mission to get you a bottle of Brora. He wrote this, and at that time he was 8 years old. He wrote it. So it was really nice and touching and things. And then my wife said, well, it's lockdown. And she said, I've given you money for your birthday this year. Come on, how dull is that? Because I didn't know what whiskey to buy. I wanted you to buy. Why don't you put it towards a bottle of Brora? Her parents did the same thing, and her brother did the same thing. So my wife and the in-laws gave me this money. So I decided that to put some of my own money to that and buy this bottle of Brora before it just dipped off the horizon and well out of reach. It's still sealed, but I have a plan for it. After lockdown, I'm going to get in the car. Maybe it'll be with Matt McKay. Maybe it'll be with my brother. Maybe it'll be with somebody that means something to me and knows something about that whiskey. And I'll drive to Sutherland and I'll go up into the field above the distillery. I'll put down a blanket and I'll sit there and I'll open that Brora. And I won't care about the cost of it. I'll be thinking very much about that sip of history and the privilege that I have, and hopefully have somebody there to share it with. If I've oversold the story, I apologize.
No, not at all. I also think you make an important point. So many whiskies are bought for a special occasion. And I think that's great when there is an occasion. You can't see it. It's in the bottom of that cabinet. That cabinet's got some of my more expensive things. You'll see a lot of them are open. That's just the type of guy I am. This shelf here, these are all bottlings that are either from 1978 or related to the year of my birth. That's where they all go there. They come out for my birthday. At the bottom of the cabinet, there's a box and a bottle of Highland Park 30-year-old. And I've had that quite a few years. I think it's an amazing whiskey at a level that I was prepared to far exceed my whiskey budget for at the time. And the price has gone up ever since. It's now way more than I paid for it. But I bought that for when I got a new job, like a full-time job. And I do have a new job with Bimber, but it's a part-time job. And I said, my wife said, you're opening it, right? And I said, I'm not. And she said, why? You got a new job? And I said, because it has to be a full-time job. When I get a full-time job, I will open that bottle. I will. But it makes the point that we buy so many things and say, I'm keep it for a special occasion. You have to make sure that those special occasions happen. And there's been a few bottles that I've had, and I said, I'm saving that for a special occasion. There's a Glen Glasshouse 30 at the top there in a teardrop. I ended up opening that on a random Tuesday. I really wanted to try it, and I bought it for a special occasion, and nothing was special. So I was like, right, I'm opening it. I'm going to try it. And I think sometimes you have to do that.
And these days,
just do it.
Especially in these days of lockdown, sometimes a special occasion is that random Tuesday, exactly that.
Do you know what makes the occasion special? Opening that whiskey. right?
The ceremony.
Yeah,
Yes.
you've opened that whiskey. That's what made that special. But there's so many bottles that, outside of just random accumulation, it's like, I'm special that. What's it going to be for? And they never happen. So you have to force it. And I would argue with some of them that the special occasion is opening that bottle of whiskey. It doesn't need anything else.
If anybody out there is thinking about opening a 30-year-old Glenglassaugh, Highland Park, or indeed a Brora, they need a witness. It needs to be a shared experience. And I'd just like to say I'm here. I'm available. And I'd like to thank Matt as well for making it easy for me when I sack the Dramble residence. I know exactly which cabinet to head for in order to get the good stuff. Jimmy Legg is saying Roy's Brora won't be closed for long, and he's winking at me. Aye. If you get plans for me, Jimmy. Time for a dram. Gregor is in. Rumour has it that me and you were going to pop that well, Gregor, I don't know. You might be here. You might be in Oregon. I don't know, buddy. If you're here when that happens, excellent. But don't worry, I'll share a wee sip for you, my friend. Don't worry. Richard Agnew's saying, you're an old romantic at heart. Absolutely, Richard, you've caught me. Ronald is saying, where can we enlist? That's right. That could end up being a very busy field and very small pours, right?
You're like Macallan. There'll be a queue. You block the roads for this bottle opening.
Up in Sunderland. Gino is saying that's a great story. Orange Wool is saying, I can meet you in Brora. I have a nice blanket. Royal, of course, and it's not too far for you as well. You're up in
Sounds romantic.
Cresimir is saying, I'll bring a nice beef sandwich when you open it. Good for you, Cresimir, all the way from Croatia. Steve A is in. Good to see you, Steve. Matt, sometimes the special occasion is that I really want to try an amazing whiskey. Steve stole the words right out your mouth, Matt. Absolutely. Jimmy Legg is saying, I have a nicer blanket. Oh, they're getting competitive. Philip Story is in here. He said,
hey.
Never had more occasion bottles than occasions. That way lies madness. Aye. Drinks Whiskey is saying in lockdown, nice to have you in again, Philip. In lockdown, I've built a cabin. It now hosts all the bottles, and I have so many unopened purely for the moment that I can have them with someone other than me, myself, and I. But you're investing for the future. Drinks Whiskey, good to have you in, my friend. Good to have you here. And Eric Cunliffe is saying, I've got my water wings on, and I'm coming over. He's going to swim the Atlantic from Canada. To come across. Chris is in Whiskey Bowman. He's saying, you better keep some aside for your son's 18th. See, there is a lovely reciprocal thing. And I hand him it back in a wee sample with a story of how it was shared, along with that note that he gave to me 10 years earlier when he was 8 years old. And I also shared a funny story with my patrons, talking about homeschooling and home supervision, when I found a glass breathing on the dining room table. And I'd left it there for a wee bit too long while I cleaned up the kitchen. And when I went back to drink it, it was all covered in sticky fingerprints. And I thought, I've used a dirty glass. And then when I was reading my son a story that night in bed, he said, Dad, you need to tell me what's in your Infinity blend. It was really nice. But he's just sticking his pinky in and stealing.
How old?
But I scolded him and I said, they are very, very aware of the... we talk about it often. I know that Daddy has a lot of whiskey around, but have you ever seen Daddy drunk? And they said no, but that might just be that Daddy does it out of sight. But no, genuinely speaking, it's we do have to talk to our kids, I guess, about alcohol. But at the same time, we don't want to make it sound so exciting that they're stealing it while it breathes and opens up. And he said, well,
you don't want to make it sound so prohibited that in doing so that they naturally are going to go for it. It's so illicit that they you got to somewhat normalize it without normalizing it. Tough, really tough.
Aye, that's right. And don't make it a taboo. Don't make it something that's they're banned from or something. Make it something that they have to understand that there are consequences. Yeah. Awareness, I think, exactly what we're talking
There we go.
about.
Back to the beginning. Awareness.
So where do we go in order to summarise? Because I'm going to bully you into playing a wee game, a visit a Speyside, Matt. Are you up for that?
I'm up for that.
Good. After we summarise then, I think we've touched on some things. And I think if we focus on the channel, if we focus on whiskey community, if we focus on the privilege that we have of all of these people enjoying this thing together, that sense of connectedness, keeping that inclusivity, keeping it positive, and always remembering that, yes, you can point the finger, you can judge, and you can blame not enough production, greedy prices, rising prices. You can talk about the fact that there's a fight for some releases. You can talk about the secondary market and flippers and all of these dynamics going on. And sometimes it does get quite cynical. And we'll talk more about it next week when Arthur's on. But I think the takeaway is the title that I took directly from your blog post. You can say it.
Yeah, there's always more whiskey.
There's always more whiskey. And my glass is an example. I thought that Matt was going to go in this direction. I've got some relatively young Kalila. My guess is that it's Kalila. I'm not sure that it is Kalila, but it's another one of those distilleries out there that we are so fortunate to have, putting out masses of peated Islay spirit consistently at good quality. Honestly, I tend to find, I know that people like peated whiskies young. Kalila gets better with age. It gets mild and elegant in its teenage years, but it's wonderfully overt at a young age as well. And it seems to do very well in a variety of casks. I am suspicious that what I'm sipping tonight is Kalila, but it's actually Kalila masquerading as something else. This is a Scarabus 10-year-old. There's milk. This is good because it's at 46% as well. Look how pale this is. It doesn't say anything on the bottle about its filtration or its colour, which is a frustration. Hunter Lang, do something about that. Please tell us what you're doing there. I know that you're probably not putting any colour in this, and certainly at 46%, you're doing that for its no filtration. But you've put the age statement on there now for Scarabus, and it's still £40 or less. 10-year-old Islay whiskey. They're doing a cask strength version for the same price, non-age statement, but it's a cask strength release as well. There are lots of releases out there. If you're not going to get your hands on Springbank for the upcoming releases from Springbank, it might not make it to you, and if it does, it might sell out a wee bit too quickly. What about its neighbour? Lots of people have discovered, I've picked up another green bottle, which was something for something else. What about its neighbour, Glen Scotia? Lots of people are discovering Glen Scotia now, but there's still lots of it available. This is a non-age statement product. It's a wee bit pricey for a non-age statement product, and you think that it's a bit too expensive right up until you understand what goes into it, and you taste it. Have you tried the Victoriana?
Oh, yes.
Amazingly bold, amazingly powerful, heavily charred oak casks, some PX in there as well. They tried to recreate a style from, obviously the name tells a tale there, doesn't it? That Victoriana, the old school style of whiskey, and they do it wonderfully well. I stayed away from this for the price for a wee bit too long when I discovered it. It was already yesterday's news, but sometimes that happens. A wee bit like another peated expression I'll share with you as well that I am enjoying very, very much indeed. And I gave this a lot of stick when it came out. I really did. I said that this was too expensive, this new range. And then I look at this and I see a 10-year-old peated whiskey at 50% ABV, fully natural, for £50. I broad brushed the whole range and judged it from the more expensive ones.
I think also with I did the same, and I think it's because they were released with some arguably very expensive whiskies, right?
Caricature releases. Yeah,
so you're not just looking at the 10 and the 12. You're looking at, right, what are you doing with this 25? Wow, that's a lot of money. Even in isolation, are they expensive? A little, but try them. And yeah, we spoke about this. The 12 is delicious, particularly if you like that sort of rich Oloroso style. And for me, the 10 peat smoke, I thought it was fabulous. I've still got a little bottle behind me, or in front of me rather. I'm facing the other way. There has to be some type of measure of what you're getting in terms of the quality of the spirit and the ABV, rather than just looking at the age statement. I think we need to move past that point, because it's a lot more broad than just saying, right, that's £5.50 per year. It doesn't work like that.
That's right. And also, especially when the production's different, the maturation's different, the producers are different, everything is different. The only thing that strings some whiskies together is that age statement. And if you focus on through the lens of the age statement, you're going to miss out, like I did. I had to teach myself a lesson. And I think that what I do with the Glenturret 12, for example, is I say, okay, this is £65 for a 12-year-old whiskey. Then you taste it and say, right, where do I go with £65 to get this profile? Macallan's not going to give it to me because it's £70 and it's at 40% ABV, so it's not the same experience. I look at Glendronach 15. It's roughly the same price, but it's a different thing. And depending on my mood and moment, I think I would maybe choose the Glenturret 12 over the whiskey I gave Whiskey of the Year in 2019. So it's very, very interesting. 12 years old, fine. But taste it blind, put it up against its peers, put it up against its peers of 12 years old, and especially 65 pounds whiskies. It stands up very, very well. There we go. So it's difficult to suggest where people should go if they can't get their hands on a Daft Mill, isn't it? I get stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I have one bottle of Daft Mill. It's not one of the single casks. It's just one of the, I think it's the summer release. And that's fine for me. I think it's nice to have one. It's nice whiskey. I'm happy with it. But that's it for me. And yeah, it took me a while to get it, but I got one. Where do you go from there? Somewhere else?
Yeah, somewhere else. It depends. I think Daft Mill is a unique whiskey. That kind of farmy, slightly lactic, that nice viscous, that lovely light, delicate ginger spice on the finish. I think it is quite unique. It's not easy to replicate that. But if you can't get Daft Mill anyway, it's kind of a moot point. But remember that Daft Mill is releasing at £100 now. That's the entry price for a bottle of Daft Mill is £100. It is what it is. And you know, you're asking a lot of the whiskey at that price point, honestly speaking. It's still lovely whiskey, it's lovely to have, but you've really got to work it yourself to justify it a bit, and it's going to take care of itself anyway. It's going to sell out. If you don't restrict me to the lowlands, I'm going to suggest a light, delicate style with a nice malty texture. Maybe not it doesn't have that nice creamy lactic side to it, but it does in a different way. I would suggest Glencadam's 10-year-old.
Oh.
Natural product, 46% ABV, natural colour, 10-year-old age statement, available everywhere, £35, sometimes less on offer. This is not Daft Mill. Let's be clear. But this is wonderful, available whiskey. There's lots of it. I hope. We hope, right?
There is. There's loads of it, and there will be ever more. But yeah, sometimes you just. It's almost like, you know, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where in nearly the final scene, he gets his hands on the cup of Christ, and he's like, "Dad, I can get it, and he's like, "Let it go." Sometimes you just got to let it go. You know, there's more to life, and sometimes it's not easy. And you've been there, I've been there, but yeah, sometimes you just got to let it go. And when you've got so many different whiskies, you know, many more than 20 years ago, you did not have this breadth of whiskey and this number of whiskies at all. Yeah, you've just got to sometimes let it go and try to take it on the chin as best you can.
Absolutely. There's never been a better time to be exploring it either. We're kind of privileged to be living in these times, honestly. I know it's expensive at times, but there are alternatives. Ever went to saying, I know a guy on the dark web who will trade your children for rare whiskey. I know he's not going to trade mine. Jay Francis is saying Daft Mill is one I'll happily miss. £100 for a whiskey around 12 years old at 46% and hard to get just can't be worth the hassle or price. It's probably a healthy place to start out, Jay. And if it happens, if it comes across your path, excellent. If it's for you, it doesn't go past you, my friend. Good to have you in. And Jim Whiskey Novice is saying also worth mentioning that Glencadam 21 is available for £100. He's saying under £100. I saw it recently for £100, absolutely, for a 21-year-old naturally presented Southern Highlander or Eastern Highlander, Glencadam's Eastern, for £100. Talking of Southern or Eastern, let's have a wee go. Is it a Speyside? For anybody that hasn't played this before, you can play along in the lounge. If you guess. It doesn't matter if you guess before me or after me or Matt, whoever's doing the guessing. If you guess, you get your hands on one of these exclusive glass toppers, these sniper coins. And the only way to get a hold of these is to play along either live here. You can join live to play me on sessions that I don't have a guest. Or you can participate from the chat. 10 questions for me to guess a whiskey, but I'm currently handicapped because I was on a winning streak, but I'm now on a 6 or 7 week or attempt losing streak, so my handicap's going to have to go back up again. So instead of 10 questions, I'm down to 9 questions. Matt, who's guessing first? It's me, isn't it?
Yeah, you're guessing first.
Okay. I'll pull up this screen here. As we count down, there's the 10 questions. I'll take away my handicap. I'll also put a timer on for myself.
I will move the bottle closer just in case I need to examine it for some of your obscure questions about this mystery whiskey.
Well, you kind of need to know where it's geographically located. You need to know the ABV.
That I can do.
Good. And you need to know who the owner is, things like that.
Yeah.
I've put a 3-minute timer up. I started that and I've got 9 questions. You're only allowed to answer yes or no. Matt, it is a Scotch single malt whiskey from core range generally available, yes?
It is.
Good, excellent. First question. Okay, Matt, is it a Speyside?
No.
Is it a Highland?
No.
Okay, is it an Islay?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a Southern Islay? Is it along the 4-6? That's Ardbeg, Lagavulin, or Lefroy?
Nicely done. No.
Does it have an age statement?
Yes.
Is it peated?
No.
Is it typically peated? Sorry.
No.
Okay, so we're at Bunnahabhain, we're at Brookladdy. I'm going to assume that Bimber is typically peated, even though it's a bit lighter. It's got an age statement on it. Is it a Bunnahabhain?
Yes.
Is it Bunnahabhain 18?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, beauty.
Wow. Right down to the wire. It is. It's the old style bottle, but it is Bunnahabhain 18.
Excellent, excellent. And I happen to know
question remaining.
The Whiskey Rev had that very bottle of Bunnahabhain 18, and we enjoyed it very, very much indeed. I get to cancel the time at 1 minute 13. Did I make that look easy enough to make you confident to step forward and have a wee go yourself?
Yeah, we'll give it a go. I mean, your best question there for me was like literally bisecting the island to remove so many possible bottles out of it.
Well, I'll give you a wee tip as a newbie to the scene that if we go into the Highland region, we always use Dalwhinnie as the centre point and say, is it north or south of Dalwhinnie, or is it east or west of Dalwhinnie? And I know that some people argue that Dalwhinnie is a Speyside, but for this, Dalwhinnie is a Highland. Anyway, I can give you a freebie to start with. We don't have a Dalwhinnie tonight.
So your freebie is you're ruling out one of probably 1,000 different whiskies.
Distilleries, yes.
Thanks,
I'm good
mate.
to you, Matt. I'm good to you.
All right, cheers, man.
Let's bring it in. I'm not going to put the timer on, Matt. This is your first time, but you're playing for a sniper coin. Let's see. Did anybody manage to get Bunnahabhain 18 from the chat? I should check that. Oh, and Gene got it. Did he get it first? Bunnahabhain? No, Yash got it before him. Bunnahabhain 18. Kresimir, the Sniper King. No, he's already won like 12 coins. Did anybody? Oh no, Chris Banks Wildlife got in before Kresimir. You might have been sniped here. Chris Banks could be the earliest one. No, Fraser Thistle got in ahead. And then Graham Fraser. My goodness. Some people were guessing really, really early. Perhaps as soon as I said Isla, the guesses started flying in. I'll need to rely on my moderators to work out who got
Who was the first?
One.
Yeah.
Excellent. People are saying I got that. People send it to error if that's correct. So it looks like multi-mission Menno, who's in here tonight for the quiz in a wee minute, is gifting it because he's already got a sniper coin, no doubt, to our friend in Belgium, Aaron McFault. Fantastic. Matt, good luck. Ask away when you're ready, my friend.
Is it from the Highlands?
No. Sorry.
Is it from Speyside?
It is a Speyside, yes. So by definition, it is in the Highlands, but we know what we're talking.
Sure. Well, we're in that box. Is the ABV higher than 43%?
Yes, good question.
Okay. Does it have an age statement?
Yes. Now, when we're in Speyside region, I have to say one of the most useful questions we can ask is it owned by one of the big four, that is Diageo, Pernod Ricard,
sure.
Edrington, or Grants? That really kind of chops down the... So that question might help you a lot if you fancy it.
I might come to it. Is it typically sherried?
I have to say, and I'll help you a wee bit here, the modern approach is yes.
The modern approach.
I can't think of one that is not. So yes.
The cogs are whirring. I'm glad you've taken the timer off.
That's okay.
It's also late, and I've had several whiskies. All right, let's start to get a bit more specific. Does the distillery make a particular thing of its water source?
Don't they all?
If you visited, would they take you and show you to it?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Rules out a few.
And another good question is it a Glen for Speysiders when we are trying to get through the murk? Macallan Final Rare is confirming that it looks like Menno was first on the Bunnahabhain 18. Well done, Menno, and very generous of you to give it to your buddy and my buddy too. What do you think? So we're at an age-stated Speysider, typically sherried.
Yeah.
Above 43% ABV.
You see, you were really homing in on it by now, and I'm still floating above this box of whiskey.
There's a lot of distilleries in Speyside, Matt, for sure.
Yeah, I picked the wrong place, right? I went to Isla. I think Isla and Campbelltown is just a disaster for this game, right?
Well, it depends. We've been caught out. People get caught out in them all. It's all about.
I went through my collection. I'm just like, right, what's core range? And I'm like, actually, there's not actually that many. This is good whiskey, and yeah, I should have made it harder. Right, come on, whiskey brain, midnight. I'm
going to give you a wee clue and tell you that it's not a new distillery, but it has certainly had its hardships, and this has been somewhat revived.
Is it in Rothes?
I will tell you. I think the answer to that is yes, but I will double check. I'm sure it is. No. It's not far away, but no. Whisky Hike is saying, hello, Roy. Good evening. Barflies just managed to join the live. We'll be watching on replay. I'm sure it'll be a good one. Always is. 2 to 3 hours of bliss after a long day. You know the score here, Whisky Hike. It's nice to welcome you in, even if it's a wee bit late. And I hope you enjoy the replay. Maybe I'll have had a chance to do the chapters and timestamps by then. The crowd is screaming. It's been well sniped a long time ago. This has definitely been guessed by the... you've got 4 questions left, plus a guess at the end. You can use up the 4 questions to try and whittle it down, Matt.
Oh, so much better than me at this guessing stuff.
Use the 2 questions I've given you. Is it one of the big 4?
Sure. Is it one of the big 4?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Independent. And the other question I gave you is it a Glen? It's always a good one.
Is it a Glen?
It's a Glen. It's an independent Glen, recently revived. Over 43% ABV, typically sherried. Certainly the modern version is. As I say, age statement on there. It's not in Rothes, but it's not far away from Rothes.
Is it... I need a better question than that.
And it is a Glen.
It's a Glen. Okay, no, I think I know where I'm going. Is Billy Walker running this distillery now?
Yes.
Right. I do know where we are then. Which bloody one is it though? Christ. I've got one question left and I've only just got to where I need to be.
You can use this question and then even when you're staring at a 0, you've still got a guess.
Trying to remember their new range, which I'll be honest, it's one of the things that I haven't been sniping or gunning for. Let's go that way. Is the age statement less than 15?
Yes.
So just musing out loud from my awareness of this.
There's two potentials.
There's two potentials. I think there's like a 10-year-old cast strength and then a 12-year-old, which
there you go.
Completely wrong with that, but
I've got you on the ropes and it's 50-50.
50-50. I'm gonna go Glenallachie 10.
Cast strength?
Yes.
No.
It's the other one. Oh.
Oh, Matt. Oh, brutal. I have to say, Matt, that was your first time there. There's people in the chat in the lounge tonight screaming. It's been sniped a long time ago.
I'm sure there are ways and means of guessing and also knowing you and what you've got hanging around. Yeah.
Perhaps that's right, and the core range, and obviously that kind of thing about it being a more revived distillery as well. But you were right on it with the 43% and higher. As soon as we honed you into an independent Glen, I think that's when it all started to kind of.
I was just too slow. I probably needed at least one more question, maybe two. So all the people who are getting that like straight away. Good work. Good quizzing.
But the other thing is that they have multiple guesses. They're not restricted to whittling it down and having one guess. They can just fire hose.
They keep firing them. Oh, okay.
So they can. I don't know who got that. Rican Haddocks is the winner, I think. Oh, that would be amazing. Alistair Grace saying Rican Haddocks is the winner up there, and I think you're up in Shetland. Are you? I think that's Lewis up in Shetland. I think so. I might have made a mistake there. And not every Matt is a Jimmy. Aye. That's right, Jimmy. That means that Jimmy is probably giving it a bit of a swagger there that he got it a wee bit earlier. Anyway, buddy, tough gig, isn't it? You have to. It's not just coming on the vPub and hanging out and dramming and talking.
Right, it's like not getting the bottle right. You don't get the bottle, but then when you do, you feel even better. So the next time I come on and I do beat your game, then I'll feel twice as good for doing it.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
You've got to lose to understand winning. So, and I think I was 50-50. So.
That's right. You ended up with a 50-50. Jimmy Legg was there a few weeks ago. That's why he has that swagger. He had a 50-50 a few weeks ago.
And he did the 50-50.
He took the laurels. Anyway, buddy, very brave of you to do that. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm going to send you, along with your dram of Nc'Nean and a couple other wee things, I'm going to send you a sniper coin just to say thank you very, very much for playing along.
You're a gem.
Aye, it's very brave of you to drop on, to spend the time, to stay a wee bit late. And given that, we're just about to I'm going to hand myself over to Menno, who's going to come in and host another quiz. This guy's become infamous. No, he's become happily famous. Hosting occasional quizzes and giving me a night off. And what it means is I get to participate along in the quiz with everybody else. So everybody, our favourite Belgian quizmaster, Menno, if you're good to come in, I'll welcome you just now, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. A bit of connection issues tonight, but I hope it's solved now. So.
Yeah, some internet issues.
Yeah, but I think I've solved it. So.
Okay, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I notice your T-shirt is saying straight out. Can we see it?
What?
Straight out of Dufftown.
Yeah, I'm wearing the stuff.
My name is Roy Duff, but in a quiz question, I famously mispronounced Duffton Distillery as Dufftown. and that sparked a bit of ridicule, which I'm quite happy to take. But that looks like an Aquavite whiskey bottle in the eye as well. You're in uniform.
Yeah, it's
you know.
Stefan
Fantastic.
Novak shirt.
A Stefan Novak special. That's exactly it. There are very few people in that club. I think there are only 4 or 5 with the T-shirt, right?
I think Daniel is number 3 and you're number 4.
Daniel Vermaas.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. You've prepared a wee quiz for us, buddy. I really enjoy your quizzes. They've gone down well in the past, and I'm looking forward to it tonight. Matt, are you able to stay and play along?
Yeah, I'll stay and play a little quiz. I've got another dram and a quiz in me.
Excellent. Menno's already shared his screen. You are in control, my friend. I'm going to kick back and pour a wee dram and play along. Matt, when Menno asks us to give our answers, we'll either make an A shape or a B shape or a C shape, or even a wee piece of paper. I'll make a wee piece of paper, and we'll hold our answers until Menno is ready for them.
Yeah.
But you take it away when you're ready, buddy.
I'll just wait for Matt. He popped up to get a piece of paper.
The Whiskey Novice is shouting, Menno, multi-mission at FOMQ, fear of Menno's quiz. Nice, nice. That's Andrew Pears is saying that. Excellent, Andrew. Wonderful stuff. And Steve is saying, a Menno quiz. Yep, strap in, Steve. It's always good fun. Always good fun. Carry on, buddy.
Okay, I think we'll start with an easy one. There are 4 degrees of charring a barrel. For char number 4, the heaviest char, charring takes place for how long? Is it A, less than a minute, B, 90 seconds, or C, 2.5 minutes?
Now, you think this is an easy one?
I hope so.
Oh, my goodness.
So.
We're in trouble tonight, Matt.
Okay. Bit technical.
Matt's maybe a bit more confident than I am in this one, but I'm going to go with it. I'm committing to my answer. You can guide us. Oh wow, I'm might be disagreeing with some of the chat here. Well, no, some of them are with me. You tell us when you're ready, buddy.
Yeah, please show me the answers. It's B and the C. Oh wow,
we're disagreeing already.
You're both off to a bad start, I'm afraid. It's 55 seconds for the heaviest, the alligator char. Yep.
There you go. And I've actually seen it demonstrated up at Loch Lomond.
Yep.
Now, I have to be fair, and I don't know what char they did at that time. But it seemed like the barrel was going through a lot of pain for a lot of time.
Too busy watching the flames and not watching your watch.
Yeah,
aye, that's right. I was filming it at the time. Wow, that's a bad start. Lots of people.
That's someone else's job, so watching.
Gordon Dundas is in tonight and showing off that he's beating me. Good to have you in, Gordon. He's on 1-1. Lindsay Holman is commiserating with me as well. He missed that one. Eric got it, and a few others. Oh, lots and lots of you did as well. A lot of people off to a bad start though with us. Matt, I have to say I'm very glad that you got it wrong too.
Hooray!
Go ahead, buddy.
Question 2. A Trusk, founded in 1974 by Justerini and Brooks, had its first official release in 1986. As the name was deemed unpronounceable for the public, it was released under which name? Potential banana skin, A, the Singleton, B, Melbourne Moor, or C, G&B single malt, sorry.
This is the easy week, is it?
Oh
no.
Goodness, Menno.
I remember 1986 well.
I thought I had this.
I'm gonna lock in a guess though.
Well, I know for a fact that it was called something.
Yeah, I know one of these, and I've seen it bottled as that, as an older bottling. So I'm gonna go for that and assume that the others aren't, because I know that I've seen one of them.
Okay,
are you ready to commit?
Yeah, I'm ready to commit, but I'm going to make a mistake. I know it. Okay.
Yeah. So A and B. Well, I can tell you that B, Melbourne Moor, is indeed an Atrusk. whiskey, but it's an undisclosed one from, I think, Murray McDavid. G&B single malt is something I completely made up, so it was indeed the Singleton.
See, I knew it was the Singleton, and I know that it has been the Singleton, but the banana skin made me think. You put the banana skin in. And it was
So
named...
banana skin. There was a banana skin within the banana skin, apparently.
I'm behind now, 0 for 2. Terrible.
Oh dear. This might be my last appearance on the vPub.
Oh no,
You
that's
won't be
already
invited
guaranteed.
again.
It's already guaranteed. You're not coming back.
Okay, question
Nice to be
3.
in this position.
Stromness was once the third distillery on Orkney until it closed abruptly in 1928. What caused the closure? Was that A, a distillery fire, B, bankruptcy after the first visit of excisemen in over 2 decades, coming to collect outstanding taxes and duties, or C, the local community voted to go dry?
Okay.
Well, oh. Okay.
This is brutal.
I mean, I know of distilleries where that has been a reason for closure. You know, those are not banana skins, effectively. They're all plausible.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I can't
Right.
believe that. Okay, I'm just going to reason and I'm just going to go.
1928. Yeah, okay.
I'm going to guess here. I'm going to guess. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, nobody in the crowd. Okay, go.
Yeah, show me. C and C. Well, redemption is here indeed.
We're off. We're off. Okay, you're.
But yeah, it's about that sort of time when temperance was a bit of a
Yep.
thing. So logical guess on that. I don't know the answer.
Well done.
The temperance movement was in full swing.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely
Whiskey
well
Knox
done.
is saying, Aquaviti, you hired them. WTF? And Magic is saying, I'm not even taking part in this quiz. We're being brutalized, Menno. Keep it coming, buddy. Keep it coming.
Okay. Question 4. Currently, how many Scottish distilleries are producing grain whiskey?
Oh, good. I've got a chance.
A, 5, B, 7, or C, 10?
Andrew Piers is saying, the fear of the Menno quiz is real. Okay, I'm ready and locked in. I'll wait on yours.
Oh.
You're ready, Matt?
No,
Yeah.
hold on. I'm counting.
Take your time.
Right. Well, I can think of at least that. So it can't be that. So we'll 50-50. I'm ready.
Okay. We get B and C. Oh. Roy, you are on a comeback.
Don't.
So we got Cameron Bridge, North British, Strathclyde, Girvan, Invergordon, Loch Lomond, and Starlaw.
I thought a lot of people might forget Loch Lomond in that list if they were
Yep.
trying to count through it. So there we go. 7. I'm back. I've got 2. 2 for 4. Halfway. I'm at a pass mark. By the way, Matt, a pass mark is halfway. 5 out of 10 tonight. That's all we need to get to, buddy.
Of course it is. It's
3
the way
more.
exams work.
I think a pass mark in a Menno quiz should be 3, actually. Okay, continue, my bit.
Okay, question 5 is always the picture question. And what we're looking at here is, in fact, a closed distillery, which is now enjoying a second life as a cultural hotspot with bars and restaurants and galleries and theaters. But the question is, where are we? Are we in Toronto, Dublin, or Lawrenceburg, Indiana?
Ready.
I love the confidence. I'm ready to.
Okay. A, B, or C, if you please, gentlemen. A indeed. What we're looking at here is the distillery district in Toronto, Canada.
Fantastic.
And Good Harmon words were then taken over by Hiram Walker at some point, I think, until they closed down somewhere around 1990.
Do you know we don't cover nearly enough Canadian on the vPub, and I think that's pretty symptomatic of Canadian whiskey in general. But they need to start exporting more of their good stuff, I guess.
Yeah, they should. Maybe Jimmy is buying it all. I don't know.
Jimmy Legg, Gino, Graham, Eric, so many Canadians in. But they're buying it. They're buying up the Scotch and complaining about not getting the Scotch. Great picture question, Menno. Superb.
Okay, question 6, and the one that's on topic tonight, fear of missing out. Currently, how many casks of whiskey are maturing in Scotland?
Oh, this is beautiful.
And this is a wee bit of an asshead question to warm you up for the big one later on. Is it more than there are cars in the UK, about as much as there are cats and dogs in the UK, or C, about 4 times more than there are people living in Scotland?
Okay, good. I have a chance. This is a very typical asshat question, Matt. So not only do you need to have a rough idea how many casks there are.
Yeah, you need a rough idea of all the other variables as well. Thank you, Menno. Really. It came up and I'm like, oh, I think I've got a chance. And then I looked at the answer and I'm like, you bastard.
That's the
I
idea.
might have an idea about BRC. I've got no idea of how many cars there are in the UK. No idea. I've got a punt on going for one where I at least know both sides. Okay, sure.
Okay.
This is a pure. Okay. You and I agree, Matt. So
both of you are indeed on the same. Well, I can tell you that there are about 17 million cats and dogs in the UK, which is not enough. I can tell you that there are about 31 million cars in the UK, which is too much, but there are indeed some 22 million casks maturing in Scotland at the moment.
Yes.
So that's about 4 times more.
Oh, not as scary as it seemed.
Mm.
That's right.
But that was the warm-up one.
Despite the asshat element, it's a great question on with tonight's topic in hand. Think of that: 22 million casks of whiskey, each of them holding, potentially holding, I guess, evaporation, a couple of 100 litres at least. Superb, Menno, superb.
And just regarding Jimmy's comment, I know and I don't care.
Yeah, I tell you what, don't be looking at the chat because there's some brutal things being thrown at you from the gallery tonight, Menno.
Don't care. Okay, question 7. Diageo sensory experts use 16 objective characteristics to explain and describe the character of new make spirit, but which one of these is not on that list?
Oh wow!
Is it A, grassy, B, green, or C, floral?
I use all of those.
Yeah, I have also used all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I don't know if it helped, but we're talking about new make spirit. I don't know if that could help in any way.
I'm locked in when you're ready, Matt.
Yeah, I'm locked in. One of them just feels that you could be a little bit more specific about it. So I'm going to go for the vagueness that is.
You got B and D.
B.
Yeah, indeed. And that's where the banana skin was, because it is indeed C, floral.
I love the flat cam delivery. Indeed, that's where the banana skin is. Floral is not on the 16 objective descriptors.
Completely surprised me too. At least that's what Dave Broom told me in the Whiskey Atlas. So I'll have to take his word for it.
Well, we believe the Dave for sure. That's unbelievable, Menno. My goodness, I'm struggling for a pass mark now. I'm 4 out of 7. Oofed. I need one more.
Okay.
Get me safe.
There's at least one, I hope, very easy question coming up.
But is that today?
Yeah, that is today. Question
Okay.
8. Glenn Douglas and Craig Lodge are what? Are they A, names of once popular but now long gone blends? B, names of new yet to be built distilleries? Or C, brands from the Loch Lomond distillery?
Process of elimination. Gordon Dundas, I feel for you, buddy. You and I are in similarly low scores. Oh my goodness, so many. Yash, Whisky Novice, Mark Carell, Graham Fraser. Menno, you're going to need to go into lockdown inside lockdown. You're going to need to hide. But we knew that this was going to be a bit of an issue.
There's still plenty of snow around here, so it'll be a tough one for anyone wanting to raid me. So,
okay, I'm going to go.
A, B, or C.
With a guess. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Oh, I was nearly there.
Oh. Roy. There are brands from Loch Lomond, the unpromoted. So you are correct.
Roche Du. I can't even think of. Is it Inchfad?
Inchfad, Crofton Gear.
Yeah, millions and millions of brands.
I don't know the ones that they've never done.
Craig Lodge is what stuck in my head. Glenn Douglas, not so sure. Never heard it. Craig Lodge, it was rattling around in my head, but it was still a guess. I wasn't confident. Excellent. There's my pass mark. I've made it. 5. You need one, Matt, for a pass mark?
One more. I need one more for the pass.
Then I hope this one will be the easy one I was talking about.
You're lying.
No, I hope not. We'll see. Question 9. We are soon welcoming Ralphie's second book, which will be called what?
Oh, wow.
A, Tales from the Whiskey Botty. B, Stories from a Whiskey Bar. Or C, From Somewhere in the Irish Sea.
Oh, God.
Now, he mentioned it because he was on the podcast with Rob and Jeremy. I want to think I remember this.
So one of those feels really like it will be him, but it's his second book. So what was the first book called? And was it called That? So is the
second
first
book
name...
was In Search of a Whiskey Botty. That was the first one.
I'm ready.
I think that was the first, so I can't go for that. So this one.
You ready, Menno? You ready?
Are you ready? We got B and we've got B, and there's your pass mark.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, brutal. Menno, did you make up that C?
Yep.
That needs to be his third book. That's what he says, doesn't it? 'Cause coming to you from the Manx Bothy somewhere in the Irish Sea. That's what he has to say. My goodness. Superb. So we're both on a pass mark. This is a brutal quiz, man. Oh my goodness. One more to go.
Okay. And I'm afraid I won't be making any friends with the last one either. If you would count all of the legal whiskey distilleries throughout Scotland's history, so the ones that are still active, the closed, the mothballs, the demolished ones, you'd end up with around how many distilleries? A, about half as much as there are Scottish lochs. B, a dozen or so less than there are Scottish castles. Or C, a bit more than there are Scottish isles.
I'm just going to guess. I'm just going to throw it in because this is ridiculous. There's no point
in getting ridiculous.
Up. Made the I'm not going to hang up. Okay. But this is still an interesting question. This is an ASAC question, but it captures the spirit of an ASAC question because it's supposed to make you think about the scale of the amount of distilleries that there are today, how many have been lost and gone. And I'm sure that Menno's going to tell us that. You're still getting brutalized from the lounge, but that's okay, Menno. I'm ready to guess.
Yeah.
Okay, then please commit. We've got a B and a B. Oh, well, I can tell you that the Scottish lochs could easily be eliminated as there are some 31,000, I believe, around, a hell of a lot. I can tell you there are around 1,000 Scottish castles and around 790 isles, but there have been some 800 distilleries. So answer C was correct.
Oh, Matt, we are brothers. We've
There you
made
go.
it
We're
halfway.
brothers at not knowing obscure whiskey literature that also requires obscure knowledge and a bit of maths at 12:30 after a few drams.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Tough.
Ben Demon Hunter is insane, still going, eh? Ben, just go back to the start of the quiz and play this quiz. But honestly, wear some armor. My goodness, that's got to be a record for the toughest quiz we've ever had to endure. Still good fun. The questions are very creative and good fun. I don't want to take it away from you, Menno, but Eric Waite is suggesting that there should have been a D, the amount of hairs on Aquavita's chin. Good to have you in, Eric. And Eric Cunliffe is saying, I'm laughing at my computer. Okay, but I that's a maniacal laugh. He's not being kind there, I don't think. And Menno's getting timed out from now on. That's one of the admins, Steve A. He's going to put you in the naughty step. Steve A saying, I've decided that Multi-Mission will not be allowed to chat in any stream I see. Repeated timeouts. Fantastic. And Whiskey Novice is laughing as well. Chris is saying Multi-Mission, there are nowhere near that many lochs. You're counting lochins, Menno. I don't mind that at all, Chris. I don't mind that at all. Jimmy Legg is saying 2 worst mark ever. Jimmy, take some comfort in the fact that tonight I don't think you are going to be alone in that. Absolutely unbelievable. I feel brutalized, but I feel like, and I don't know, I've never felt so good to get 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it feels all right, doesn't it? 5 feels all right.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I'm not making it up, Matt. Generally, the quiz at the end always has a 5 out of 10 pass mark. It's not being handicapped or changed because it's Menno that's hosting it. Guys, I'm going to wind up tonight. I'm going to hang out with the people in the chat for just 2 or 3 minutes just to say goodbye to them. Please stay backstage with me and I'll raise a wee glass with you to thank you after. And yes, I'll have a different way of thanking you, Menno, but hang around if you've got the time, buddy. I know it's an hour ahead. Thanks so much for being brave enough to step in. Thanks for being so creative with the questions. Thanks for giving us all a hard time. I feel quite rattled. The adrenaline is going. It's just that was brutal. Menno, thank you so much, buddy. It's always good to have you.
Cheers.
Stepping up and
thank you for having me. Next time will be easier. Promise.
No, you don't change a thing. Don't change a thing, buddy. Hang around, won't you? Thanks, Menno. Matt, had a wonderful time chatting to you tonight, and I've worked out this is maybe the 3rd time I think we've spoken in real time, backwards and forwards. I get the impression that if we were given the time and energy, we could talk for a hell of a lot longer. I knew that it was going to be fun to have you on for any topic. I've liked to hear that you've already suggested that you might be on again at some point in the future for another topic. I think that would be wonderful. I've enjoyed hanging out with you tonight, my friend. I hope you've had some fun.
It's an absolute pleasure being here with you and the guys, and I look forward to it. I look forward to it in person, and I'll bring me rug. I'll bring it.
Oh, you're after some of the Brora up.
Yeah, I'll bring a rug
above the distillery. Well, that might just happen, Matt. It'd be wonderful if it did.
No,
thanks.
It's
backstage,
my pleasure. My pleasure joining you.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Matt.
Bandival.
I'm going to go and thank Matt carefully backstage after we finish the live tonight, but I'll give Menno a punch in the solar plexus for everyone, all the barflies that was brutalized by that amazing quiz tonight. Listen, thanks to everybody that's participated tonight. I know that the subject sometimes got a wee bit crunchy, sometimes talking about some of the difficult things that we have to deal with when we become quite passionate and excited about Scotch whisky, but it's all part of the fabric. It's all part of what we enjoy. The takeaway from all of this is passion, that thing that drives us to do these things, and just to be aware of how that passion can sometimes overexcite us, and I include myself. Most of the topics that we've spoken about tonight, I can see me in the discussion and the place that I take in all of that. We're all very much part of the problem. I'm there evangelizing week after week about whiskies right, left and centre. I'm evangelizing to my friends, my family, to anybody that will listen to me and allow me to bully them into understanding what whiskey's about. I want them to appreciate just how amazing a creationer it is. So it makes sense that if everyone's doing that, that there will be strains on supply, and it might be difficult to get certain types of whiskey. But as Matt's article said when it fed the title for tonight's vPub, as you saw in that video from the amazing Freddie Johnson over at Buffalo Trace, that's linked in the description below, by the way, the link to that video, if you want to see it again, there's always going to be more whiskey. And on that note, I'll ask you to join me again a week from tonight, where we talk about some similar crunchy subjects, but lots of other really exciting things as well, when I welcome in Arthur Motley, 20 years a whiskey buyer now for SMWS and the Royal Mile Whiskies in retailer. Very interesting guy. Again, one of these guys that I'm sure I could speak to for hours on end. I hope that you'll enjoy hanging out with us next week as we talk about other crunchy subjects and celebrate the role of a whiskey buyer next week. And in the meantime, I'll thank so many of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies for hanging out with us again so late tonight. Again, it's knocking on for another 3-hour session. It just seems to be the way it's going right now. You'd think with weekly shows I'd be able to make them more succinct and shorter, but I'm afraid I'm not very good at that. I'm still very grateful to all of you beautiful people. Hammy Diver is saying fantastic content tonight. Slancha, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Nick is in Whiskey 101. I'm just spotting you now, my friend. Multi-mission. Is it easier to find Bimber on a shelf than get a pass here tonight? A great night and always a fun quiz, even though it's tough. Thank you, Menno. Brilliant sentiment, Nick. Thank you very much. Chris is saying, evening, everyone. Rican Haddix is saying the takeaway from tonight is Menno's quiz is not easy. Thanks for the vPub. Rob is in as well. Good to see you, Rob. He's saying that's too slow. Saying thanks, Roy. Thank you to you as well, Rob. Always a pleasure to have you. And Rob Schroeder. Dram Mondays is here. Sorry I missed you all. I'll catch you on the replay now. Wonderful to have you in live. Wonderful to have you picking up on the replay. Say thanks if you're picking up on the replay to all dedicated barflies that keep this independent, to keep it ad-free, and to keep it easy to navigate. I'll stay up and do the chapters tonight as well. Thank you all for joining me for another wonderful vPub. You're all very dearly loved, and I look forward to seeing you all a week from tonight. Thanks, whiskey folk. Slancha ba.